Chapter 12:19. Hong sneered, put his hands behind his back, and said in a cold voice, Boikao, first come, first served is indeed important when buying things, but there is also a saying that the highest bidder gets it. What? I can afford it, but you can't, so you say I'm aggressive? You people from the G family of Shichi are all shameless. You. Boikao's face changed. Seeing more and more people watching around, he was even angrier. It was good that the highest bidder got it, and first come, first served was also good. The problem was that the spiritual object he bought was used to refine the power of stars. What did it have to do with the god of 5 grains? Even if he bought it, Hong would never use it. He had just walked to the front desk and hadn't had time to pay the bill, but Hong directly said that he would pay 10 times the price. It would be strange if he didn't target him. Who would directly bid without even looking at the goods before buying? Even the stupid son of the landlord didn't dare to play like this. There were many people watching the show, but most of them didn't mean to interrupt. Only a few people whispered. Again. Hong and Ji Kao have a big quarrel every time they meet. What's the point of quarreling? In my opinion, let's disperse. These two guys don't go to the arena. It's really boring. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed slightly, and his eyes fell on the handsome young man's face. He sneered, is this the handsome eldest son of the Ji family who even the demon concubine Daji couldn't help seducing? In my opinion, you're just an ordinary person. If Daji really likes you, then I can only say that you don't want to donate your eyes to someone who needs it, okay? Haha. As soon as he said that, someone couldn't help laughing. Many people also looked at Lin Yuan curiously. After all, it was not the first time that Hong and Boikao had this kind of conflict. And every time, it was Hong who made the adjustment, and Boikao just scolded him to vent his anger. In the end, they parted on bad terms. They had never really fought. But this time, it seemed to be a little different. Hong came to make trouble for Boikao this time, and he brought a helper. When Lin Yuan's voice fell, Boikao's face darkened, and he said coldly, how dare you? How can a monarch be slandered by such a lowly person? Boikao's appearance was indeed not bad. In terms of handsomeness, he absolutely crushed those little fresh meat that Lin Yuan had seen in his previous life. Moreover, there was a strong scholarly aura between his brows. If he did not speak, he could be considered as someone with a scholarly aura. Moreover, although Boikao's facial features were handsome, at the same time, he was tall. Not only did he not have any feminine aura, but he perfectly balanced the two auras of gentleness and masculinity. Even though there were not many cultivators who were ugly, Boikao's appearance was definitely in the top 10 of the people that Lin Yuan had seen. But for some reason, Lin Yuan just hated Boikao. Even though it was the first time the two had met, the disgust that came from the bottom of their hearts made Lin Yuan unable to hold back his ridicule. Emperor? You are Emperor Ji heir. Lin Yuan tilted his head. The cold aura that he had honed in the sky martial world for 3 years was completely released. He said coldly, after the 3 sovereigns ruled the world and the 5 emperors settled the world, all human kings were called emperors. Even Dxian, who was tarnished as an eternal tyrant, was the same. On the other hand, your Ji family's Zhou dynasty, after 800 years, even if you were a pig, you should have become the king of pigs, right? Good fellow, after 800 years, the Zhou dynasty became weaker and weaker. Since GFA began to call himself king, Ji Chang, who was conferred the title of king, was also only king. The subsequent rulers came one after another, and the territory became smaller and smaller, causing more and more vassals in the world, causing chaos in the spring and autumn warring states period, causing countless deaths and injuries. The face and dignity of the human king has been completely thrown away by your Zhou dynasty. Speaking till here, Lin Yuan's lips curled up slightly, and he laughed sinisterly. And what are you? Ji Chang died and was conferred the title of king. You are not even a fart. Being listed as the North Pole Emperor in the investiture of the gods, you are considered an emperor? You. Brat, how can a sparrow or swallow know the ambition of a swan? You don't understand how powerful the great Zhou dynasty is at all. Have you ever seen any dynasty after the Zhou dynasty that lasted for 800 years? Bo Yikao pointed at Lin Yuan with a red face and scolded, "Besides, since you know that I am the Middle Heaven North Pole Emperor of Ziwei, who are you? You don't even dare to introduce yourself, and you dare to insult the emperor? Haha." Lin Yuan laughed and turned his gaze to Yin Hong's face. He said in a low voice, "Yin Hong, Ji Cao doesn't know me. What about you?" Yin Hong stared at Lin Yuan, his sword-like eyebrows tightly knitted together, as if he was thinking about something. After a while, Yin Hong's expression suddenly changed. He took a few steps back and said involuntarily, Why are you here?" The smile on Lin Yuan's face grew wider, but he didn't answer. Instead, his gaze fell on Bo Yikao's face. Bo Yikao was silent for a while. His expression was also a little ugly. Although the North Pole Emperor's position was honorable, he was only a major celestial official and didn't have a lot of faith among the people. Most of the time, when people talked about the North Pole Star, it was basically a dynasty that was about to fall and there were endless rebellions everywhere. In order to justify themselves, the rebels would say that they were the North Pole Star that had descended to the world and that they were the destined lord. The North Pole Star had descended to the world. Most of the time, it was a rebellion. Did the North Pole Emperor not care about his reputation? But to be honest, the North Pole Emperor's position was not as powerful as that of the five-grain star Yin Hong or the Taisui Yin Jiao. If he met them outside the untainted world, most of the time, it was the brothers of the Yin family who would wantonly humiliate him, the North Pole Emperor, while he could only scold them. After all, they were not on the same level at all. Even if they were comparing backers, they had the support of the immortals of the Chan sect. In the early years, he, the North Pole Emperor, could still rely on the Emperor of Zhou, GFA. Later, when GFA and the Zhou dynasty were gone, he almost lost his lineage. Hey, Yin Hong's helper seems to have a powerful background. Of course. Didn't you see that he came from the Heaven No. 1 shop? Is that a place where ordinary people can afford to shop? You're right. I just don't know who this person is. Even the immortals of the top greater world like the untainted world are afraid of him. Discussions once again broke out in the surroundings. These onlookers were indeed very curious about Lin Yuan's identity. After all, the untainted land was a top big thousand world. Yin Hong and Bo Yikao were both immortals in it. Their status in the heavens and realms was actually not low. However, in the face of an unknown person, Yin Hong behaved so reverently. However, Bo Yikao clearly did not know this person. Therefore, this person either came from a world that didn't belong to the untainted world, or Yin Hong colluded with others to put on a show to humiliate Bo Yikao. Chapter 12:20. All of a sudden, many people's gazes became meaningful. There was no lack of transmigrators, reincarnators, and people with great providence who could enter this space. Behind each of them stood the heavenly Tao or similar existences. It could be said that any one of these people, if placed in their own world, would definitely stand at the top of the pyramid, even if they could not suppress eternity. However, the reason in this world had always been very simple. No one would pay a price for no reason. Just like how the system cultivated each host to deal with Hongjun, the purpose of these people with great luck was to invade other worlds or guard against the invasion of other worlds. Speaking of the untainted world. In all the worlds in the universe, any world that had a connection with the outside world knew that the untainted world was an extremely terrifying world. In other worlds, those losers who had left their names behind in the prehistorical world could be counted as peerless powerful beings who could suppress all enemies. Therefore, the untainted world had always been called the Great Wide World of the Great Wide World. Bo Yikao and Yin Hong were both existences in the untainted world. In this trading market, as long as they did not go too far, generally, no one was willing to interfere with them. In other words, no one was willing to offend the untainted world for such a trivial matter. But today, a young man of unknown origin made Yin Hong show fear, and he even took the initiative to provoke Bo Yikao. It was clear that he did not intend to leave any face for the untainted world. Even those who were not interested in what had happened here could not help but cast curious looks. This was not a trivial matter. After all, in the eyes of these experts from other worlds, Lin Yuan's current behavior was like slapping the face of the untainted world. In the current situation, there were only two possibilities. First, the provocateur was a fool who did not know how powerful the untainted world was, so the ignorant were fearless. Second, the provocateur's background was not small. Even in the face of the untainted world, he was not afraid at all. Judging from Yin Hong's reaction, the facts should be inclined to the second possibility. But speaking of which, if there really was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the untainted world, it was definitely not good news for them. It had been said before that there could not be kindness in all the worlds. Even if both sides had no ill intentions, they still had to be on guard against each other. Over time, neither side found the other pleasing to the eye. Over the years, the untainted world had been like a malignant tumor. It had crushed nearly 100 sectors and even forced many sectors to form an alliance with the help of some existences that had escaped from the untainted world. Only by gathering the power of hundreds of sectors could they barely suppress the untainted world's attack. At this time, if another world that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the primordial world appeared, that would be fun. The balance that had been maintained with great difficulty would be broken in an instant. If the two sides were to fight, the surrounding greater worlds might be destroyed by the aftermath of the battle, not to mention the lesser worlds and medium worlds nearby. More and more people gathered around. Lin Yuan still had a playful expression on his face. After a moment of silence, Bo Yikao slowly raised his head. His handsome features were somewhat distorted, and he said in a deep voice, "Your Excellency, I don't know where you come from, but you and I have no enmity against each other. We can even say that we have never met before. But you bullied me with Yin Hong without any reason. Isn't this a bit too much? Or do you really think that there is no one in the untainted world?" As soon as Bo Yikao finished speaking, several people's expressions changed slightly. They pushed the crowd aside and moved closer. These people were all existences from the untainted world. Not all of them were immortals, but the weakest one was an individual immortal. Previously, when Yin Hong and Bo Yikao had a conflict, they had taken it as a joke. After all, Yin Shang had been destroyed by the Zhou dynasty. The two princes of Yin Shang and Ji Chang's eldest son had been sent to the investiture of the gods. Even in the heavenly court, they could meet from time to time if they wanted to. Therefore, they were not surprised that the two princes of Yin Shang had made trouble for Bo Yikao. But today, this matter had changed. To put it simply, no matter how much trouble Yin Hong and Bo Yikao made, it was an internal matter of the untainted world. However, Lin Yuan was obviously not an existence from the untainted world. Now that he stood out, he almost pointed at Bo Yikao's nose and scolded him. If he could not get an explanation for today's matter, wouldn't the untainted world lose face here? Lin Yuan crossed his arms in front of his chest. His eyes swept over those people who were approaching him, and he said indifferently, "Am I wrong? Do you deserve to be called an emperor? If you are really angry and have been humiliated by me to this extent, what you should do is to fight with me and not ask me loudly if I think that there is no one in the untainted world. To put it nicely, you are just pretending to be fierce. To put it bluntly, you are a piece of trash." Yin Hong, who was standing aside, narrowed his eyes slightly. He glanced at Lin Yuan and then at Bo Yikao. His expression was uncertain, as if he was thinking about something. He really did not understand the current situation. Logically speaking, although the Black Jiao had some connections with the untainted world, he was only in existence after the ancient times. The demons, ghosts, immortals and Buddhas of that era had already fallen into silence. After all, that period of time was the end of the Dharma of heaven and earth. Even the immortal sages could not interfere with the human world at will. They could only open up their own heavenly abodes and hide in them, waiting for the end of the Dharma of heaven and earth to pass. It was also during that period of time that two existences, who were called taboos in the untainted world, joined hands and cut off the untainted world from that period of time and space. As a result, the world that was originally created by the primordial chaos was fragmented. Fragments could be seen everywhere in the sea of bitterness. Although the untainted world was more vast now, almost 90% of the land was plundered from other worlds. Whether the black Jiao came from the ancient times or the ancient times before it was cut off, there was no difference. It was impossible for existences in that era to come into contact with immortals and gods. This should be the first time that the black Jiao and Bo Yikao met. Why? Why would the black Jiao show hatred towards Bo Yikao? Yin Hong was very clear about the black Jiao's attitude towards Bo Yikao at this moment. Because for countless years, he and Yin Jiao had the same attitude towards Bo Yikao. He could not see through him. He really could not see through him. This black flood dragon couldn't be crazy, right? Yin Hong looked thoughtful. Although he did not hit Bo Yikao when he was down, there were so many onlookers around. After all, Bo Yikao was also a person who cared about his reputation. At this moment, his face became redder and redder, and a fierce light gradually appeared in his eyes. Chapter 12:21. The sharpness in Bo Yikao's eyes was not obvious, but many people still noticed it. It was interesting to think about it. Bo Yikao was the North Pole Emperor. He commanded all the stars in the sky and controlled ghosts and lightning. He was definitely not an ordinary person. According to the ranks of the gods, even the 4 North Pole sages, including Tianpeng, Tianyu, Sheng, and Jinwu, had to serve the emperor. The North Pole Emperor of the Middle Heaven North Pole Emperor controlled the heavens and the earth. He commanded all the stars in the sky and controlled ghosts and lightning. He ruled all the stars, controlled all the laws, and ruled Fengdu. He was the master of all the stars. In the entire heavenly court, the North Pole Emperor was only below the Sky Emperor in terms of status and power. But facts proved that one's power depended on the person. One could not be invincible just because he was conferred a high position. Anyone who knew a little about the untainted world knew that Bo Yikao, the North Pole Emperor, was a joke. Not to mention the 4 North Pole sages, even the star officials did not give Bo Yikao face. Star officials at the level of the 6 divisions of the Southern Dipper, the 5 stars, the 4 luminaries, and the 7 elements of the Big Dipper even dared to ignore Bo Yikao and never participate in the meetings he held. But Bo Yikao was right about one thing. Emperors could not be humiliated. Bo Yikao did not know Lin Yuan and had never interacted with Lin Yuan before. But now, he was forced to this point in public. If he still swallowed his pride like he did with Yin Hong and Yin Jiao, his name would not be on the investiture of the gods when he returned to the untainted world. Although the North Pole Emperor's star was sullen, he was still one of the great gods of the heavenly court. He was immortal. If there was a choice, who would be willing to never reincarnate and have their soul destroyed? Okay, let's fight in the arena. Bo Yikao's handsome face became more and more twisted. He flung his snow-white sleeves and walked towards the arena with a cold snort. Lin Yuan followed Bo Yikao expressionlessly, his arms still crossed in front of his chest. In fact, at this point, Lin Yuan himself also felt that something was wrong. It was clearly the first time he had met Bo Yikao, so why did he have such a strong sense of disgust? Even when he saw Bo Yikao's face, he could not help but feel a sense of hatred from the depths of his heart. Could it be that this brat's face was poisonous? Anyway, according to Feng Shen, Bo Yikao's life was not smooth sailing. He was the eldest son of Ji Chang. After Ji Chang passed away, he would be able to smoothly sit on the top seat of Shiqi and become one of the vassals. However, he was born at the wrong time. He met Di Xian, who resisted the theocracy, broke the hierarchy, and wantonly promoted talents but did not have a high background. Coupled with the manipulation of the chess enthusiasts, the entire Yinshang was directly involved in the calamity. Good lord, the first successor of Shiqi, not to mention Shiqi, even Zhaoge was chopped into meat paste by Di Xian before she could walk out. She was even made into meat soup and fed to Ji Chang. After his death, a bit of his true spirit was listed on the list of deification. Although he won the priesthood of Ziwei the Great, his virtue was not worthy of the priesthood. He did not have many incense offerings. When the Zhou dynasty was destroyed, his incense offerings were almost cut off. The 4 holy immortals and other celestial officials under him were more famous than him. Lin Yuan, who had not experienced that era, did not know the specific content of these stories. But now, he just came to the trading market to buy something. Good Lord, he first ran into Yin Hong and was directly crushed by his wealth. He was angry and argued with him, but then he ran into Lin Yuan. And Lin Yuan inexplicably had a feeling of disgust for him. This guy was qualified to be the Ziwei Emperor's star, but he was absolutely suitable to be a jinx. Soon, Bo Yikao and Lin Yuan came to the periphery of the arena one after another. The arena in the center of the trading market was not a place to fight. Before the two sides went to the arena, they had to make a notarization first. After finding the person in charge of the arena to make an appointment, they each had to take out a prize of equal value as collateral before they could go to the arena. In addition to paying the corresponding divine power of the arena manager and the arena manager, the prize, taken out by the two sides, belonged to the winner. However, it was easy to make an appointment for the arena. Almost 8 out of the 10 arenas were empty. After all, everyone came to the trading market to exchange for various kinds of spiritual objects needed for cultivation. No one would come to this martial arts competition. Even if they won, so what? They just destroyed the opponent's consciousness. Even without the nourishment of spiritual objects, it would recover in 3 to 5 days. Bo Yikao snorted. Looking at Lin Yuan, who was calm, he said in a cold voice, "Boy, don't say that I bullied you. I'll let you take the collateral first, lest I take out a good treasure. You can't even get a fraction of my treasure even if you sell everything you have." Humph. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. After thinking for a moment, Lin Yuan swung his right hand and threw out a gray stone. "I thought you had some good treasure. It turns out that it's just a broken stone. TSK, boy, if you don't dare to fight with me, then forget it. How about you kneel down and kowtow to me 3,000 times, then I'll let this matter go. How about it?" Glancing at the stone that Lin Yuan threw out, Bo Yikao's face suddenly had a touch of ridicule. The arena did not have any requirements for the prize. If one didn't find it shameful, one could just grab a handful of sand from the roadside. However, if one side took out a treasure, the other side had to take out a prize of equal value as collateral. There was no loophole to take advantage of. Seeing that Lin Yuan was indifferent, Bo Yikao's face darkened slightly. He didn't continue to speak. With a casual wave of his right hand, a crystal-clear stone appeared out of nowhere. It looked like only a thin layer of shell was left, and the things inside had been extracted. One could vaguely feel that this stone contained a strange power. Casually throwing the stone in his hand onto the arena, Bo Yikao sneered and said, "I don't have a hobby of picking up trash. This is a star stone produced by the Ziwei Star Palace. Although I have extracted nearly 80% of its star power, in the mortal world, it can barely be regarded as a treasure. Anyway, it's all trash. I won't argue with you so much. Get on the arena." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yuan still stood in the same place. His body was as straight as a javelin, but the ridicule in his eyes became more and more intense, as if it was going to turn into a terrifying substance. At this moment, the star stone that Bo Yikao threw onto the arena was crushed by a force and instantly turned into powder. It was blown away by the wind, and after a moment, no trace of it could be seen. What kind of magic did you use? It's just a broken stone. How can there be such a difference?" Bo Yikao's slender sword-like eyebrows were slightly raised, as if he still couldn't believe what he had seen. Chapter 1222. It was said that the arena manager was a relic left behind by the mighty figure who had created this space, and it had been acting like a puppet for many years. It was hard to say whether it had any intelligence or not, but this space had been created countless years ago. Almost every year, there would be reckless people trying to exploit the loopholes in the arena. Without exception, all of them would be killed by the arena manager without even leaving behind a complete corpse. However, it was precisely because of these suicidal people that some of the rules of the arena had been clearly written out. When both sides received a prize, the value had to be equal. If they couldn't reach the standard value, they had to do their best to get closer to the correct value. Only then would they have a chance to raise the stakes when the arena manager inspected them. But for someone to be crushed like this meant that there was an enormous gap between the prizes of the two sides. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. They didn't even have a chance to raise the stakes before they were crushed. That stone, what on earth was that? Bo Ikao's eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the murky stone. Does the mighty Emperor Ziwei have such poor eyesight? Lin Yuan exhaled lightly with a smile. Have you seen the Stone of 3 Lives before? As soon as he finished speaking, all the existences that came from the Great Desolate World or had some sort of relationship with the Great Desolate World gasped. Only then did they stare at the 3 Lives stone with deep shock on their faces. The Stone of 3 Lives wasn't some kind of stone meant for marriage. This demon master had once dominated the primordial chaos and was about to engulf the entire 3 realms. And now, the Stone of 3 Lives had been placed on the arena. Didn't that mean that Bo Ikao was going to take out that item? Gasp. Immediately, someone sucked in a breath of cold air. This guy had come with ill intentions. This guy was here to challenge Bo Ikao. Lin Yuan stared at Bo Ikao with a hint of a smile on his face. I've already laid down my Dao. If Emperor Ziwei doesn't dare to accept it, then just pretend I didn't say anything. I don't plan on humiliating you any further. All you have to do is avoid me when you see me in the future. Humph. Bo Ikao harumphed coldly. A hint of wariness flashed through his eyes as he swept his gaze over the Stone of 3 Lives. After all, this was Emperor Ziwei. So what if he was only a figurehead? In any case, his authority was still there. Bo Ikao really did have a treasure that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the 3 Lives stone, or rather, with the 3 Lives stone that had been sealed by Mother Nuwa. However, at this moment, he couldn't decide whether or not he should use it as a prize to participate in this duel. The 3 Lives stone was indeed very tempting, but if that treasure was lost, even if he sold himself, he wouldn't be able to afford it. So that's all there is to the Emperor's star. He casually took out a 3 Lives stone as a wager. Is the Emperor really that poor? Suddenly, a lazy voice sounded from outside the crowd. Lin Yuan turned his head and glanced over. It was another old acquaintance. Previously, he had used the system to summon a helper for the host. In 3 minutes, he had practically killed all the top cultivators and demon beasts of the Tianwu world. The other party had even left him a strange insect codenamed Tao Tai. However, even now, Lin Yuan still didn't know what the other party's name was. He could only refer to him as White Coat. Following the ruckus caused by White Coat, the spectators all began to jeer. After all, the conflict between Bo Ikao and the Yin brothers wasn't just a matter of a day or two. However, every time, it was just a verbal dispute. How could it be like this time, when they were actually going to fight on the stage? At this time, how could they let Bo Ikao off the stage so easily? Impudent. Hearing the clamor, Bo Ikao's face turned red. He growled, when did this emperor say that he wasn't going to fight? This emperor just has too many treasures in his collection and hasn't thought of what to use as a wager yet. You can't really think that this emperor is that poor, right? At the same time, Bo Ikao waved his right hand and a golden light flew out. When it landed in front of the stage manager, it had already turned into a very old ancient book. On it were written the words, Dongxian Spirit Treasure True Spirit Position Diagram. This book wasn't something that could be found on the streets. Although it wasn't something that could only be found in the world, and it wasn't some supreme cultivation technique, anyone who knew about this book couldn't help but be greedy when they had the chance to obtain it. Because this book had another name, Enhanced Investiture of the Gods. During the investiture of the gods, Jiang Zia used the investiture of the gods to defeat Zhou. After the investiture of the gods, more than 300 righteous gods were conferred. Accurately speaking, it wasn't 300 righteous gods because a large portion of them were celestial officials. Although they were practically independent, they were still employees in name and didn't sit in the position of a big shot who gave orders. Of course, not all big shots were like Bo Ikao, who occupied such an important position as the Ziwei Emperor, but couldn't even do anything to the celestial officials under his command. However, compared to the investiture of the gods, the map of true spirit position diagram was much more powerful. After all, the investiture of the gods was just a novel in the age of Dharma's end, which was a mixture of many legends and legends. However, the map of true spirit position diagram, even in the age of Dharma's end, was recognized by Taoism. Even Patriarch Sanqing of Taoism was on the map of true spirit position diagram. What was more terrifying was that the number of immortals on the map of true spirit position diagram was 1 digit more than the investiture of the gods. There were as many as thousands of immortals on the map of true spirit position diagram. There were even real cultivators on the map of true spirit position diagram that appeared on the map of true spirit position diagram, such as Dragon Tiger Mountain and Mao Shan Mountain. Even Gigu Zi, Zhongliang and others were lucky enough to be on the map of true spirit position diagram. In the map of true spirit position diagram, immortals were divided into 7 classes, from Patriarch Sanqing to human kings and saints, and below them were emperors and generals. It almost included most of the existences in the history of the 3 realms. There was a saying in the untainted world that after getting the map of true spirit position diagram, as long as the time was right, one could set off another investiture god tribulation at any time to establish the heavenly court. When the tribulation was over, whoever got the map of true spirit position diagram would be the real master of the heavenly court. This was much better than the awkward situation when Haotian was just established in the heavenly court. This thing was also in Lin Yuan's plan. It was the kind of treasure that he didn't need to look for if he didn't have the chance, but he would definitely get it if he had the chance. Originally, he just wanted to give it a try. After all, as the Ziwei Emperor, it was actually very suitable for him to be in charge of the map of true spirit position diagram. However, considering Bo Ikao's image as a good-for-nothing, Lin Yuan actually didn't have much hope. At most, it would be a hopeless situation. Unexpectedly, Bo Ikao really threw out a map of true spirit position diagram. Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly lit up, as if thousands of stars were blooming in his eyes. Chapter 12:23. Standing in the arena, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and stared at Bo Ikao at the other end of the arena. Bo Ikao was not so polite. Almost as soon as he stepped into the arena, he flicked his sleeves and instantly released thousands of rays of light. These rays of light were gradually distorted and deformed in the process of flying, as if they were crushed by an invisible force. Humph! Failing to hit him, Bo Ikao snorted coldly and flicked his sleeves again. A golden bridge formed by golden light went straight to Lin Yuan, and the sound of glass breaking could be faintly heard. Lin Yuan did not choose to take it head-on. Instead, he turned sideways to avoid the golden bridge that was attacking him. He opened his mouth and spat out a ray of colorful light, which also shot toward Bo Ikao. No one knew what kind of existence created this space, but all kinds of treasures could be traded here. As long as the deal was finalized, someone would naturally take away the items traded by the 2 sides and exchange them. However, the ones who really came to this space were all bodies of consciousness. Bodies of consciousness could also fight with other bodies of consciousness, but this kind of battle was different from the fight of physical body and the fight of flesh and blood. It was a different kind of battle. In short, it was fantasy. With enough understanding of each great way, one could imagine powerful moves in an instant and perfect them, and then make them appear to fight against the enemy. The more familiar one was with the original, the more powerful the manifestation would be. In theory, if Lin Yuan was familiar with the manufacturing methods of various military weapons, he would have no problem throwing out tens of thousands of mushroom bombs in an instant. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan knew nothing about mushroom bombs. He even knew how to use most of the military weapons but did not know how to make them. Insignificant skill. Bo Ikao looked coldly at the colorful light that was getting closer and closer to him. Although he did not take it head-on, he had already smelled a sweet and fishy smell. Obviously, This thing was poisonous and could not be taken head-on. Otherwise, it would be easy to suffer a loss and lose the rhythm of the battle. With a thought, 9 bronze cauldrons suddenly appeared above Bowie Cow's head. The 9 cauldrons were all made of bronze, carved and smelted with famous mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas. If one's eyesight was good enough, one could even see the unique strange things in those mountains and rivers. These were the 9 cauldrons of China. The moment the 9 cauldrons appeared, Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed into slits, revealing a look of dread. Rumor has it that the 9 cauldrons were created during the early years of the Xia dynasty. Di divided the 9 provinces and gathered all the copper in the country to create the 9 cauldrons. This meant that the 9 provinces were under the jurisdiction of the human king. It could be said that before Qin Shi Huang used the jade annulus of He clan to carve the imperial jade seal, the symbol of the human king's authority was the 9 cauldrons. The 9 cauldrons were even considered the most precious treasures in the Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties. Unfortunately, the prodigal Zhou Xianwang had lost it. It was said that it had sunk into the Sisui River. But strictly speaking, Zhou Xianwang and Bowie Cow belonged to the same category. They were both unlucky types. In the 800 years of the Zhou dynasty, every emperor of Zhou would confer titles to vassals and kings, and the vast territory became smaller and smaller. Some powerful vassal states even began to surpass the Zhou dynasty. Therefore, every emperor of Zhou did not have an easy time, especially Zhou Xianwang. Because the era he lived in was the peak of the reform of the vassal states. Famous officials and generals emerged one after another, such as Tian Ji, Zhou Ji, Peng Wan, Sun Bin, Shang Yang, Shen Buhai, and so on. These powerful people who left a deep mark in history all became famous during Zhou Xianwang's reign. It could be imagined how difficult Zhou Xianwang's days were. However, although the 9 cauldrons were lost during Zhou Xianwang's reign, it was undeniable that the 9 cauldrons were the symbol of the human king's authority. At the same time, they were the most precious treasures of humanity that had suppressed the fate of the Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties. Although they could not be compared with the 10 heavens primordial spirit treasure, their power was definitely above the Tao Te Ching and other precious treasures of virtue. Of course, some said that after the fall of the Zhou dynasty, the 9 cauldrons disappeared into the Sisui River. Others said that after the fall of the Zhou dynasty, the world was in chaos. In order to prevent the 9 cauldrons from being lost or falling into the hands of evil people, the 3 emperors in the fire cloud cave used their great magic to take the 9 cauldrons away to suppress the fate of the human tribe. The 9 cauldrons appear and suppress the heavens. Suppress them. Bowie Cow stretched out his hand and pointed at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan immediately felt a strong force falling from the unseen world. He could not resist the suppressing force at all. Almost in an instant, Lin Yuan was forced to half-kneel on the ground. His face was red, and his body made of consciousness even faded a lot, as if it would collapse at any time. After the successful attack, Bowie Cow almost could not suppress the complacency on his face. He said with a gloomy face, "Humph, a mere ant dares to talk about being the emperor. Today, I will kill one of your consciousnesses. If we meet again in the future, I will definitely destroy your soul and your body and spirit." Half kneeling on the ground, Lin Yuan let out a long breath of turbid air. He frowned slightly. Here it comes again. That hatred that came out of nowhere once again took over his heart. It seemed that after Bowie Cow condensed the 9 cauldrons, this hatred became more and more intense. It was so intense that Lin Yuan could vaguely distinguish that there were other emotions hidden in this hatred, anger at his incompetence. Roar. A roar like that of a wild beast came from his throat. A strong force of unknown origin burst out. Under the support of this force, Lin Yuan stood up from the ground uncontrollably. He stared coldly at Bowie Cow, and the anger in his chest almost swallowed up his last bit of reason. This is impossible. Bowie Cow's face changed slightly, and he said involuntarily, "I have studied the 9 cauldrons for hundreds of years, and only then did I see the simulation of a wisp of gist of trueness. The 9 cauldrons, which condensed the fate of 3 dynasties, are the supreme national weapons. It can be said that once the 9 cauldrons appear, the world will be stabilized. You are not a sage. How can you resist the suppressing force of the 9 cauldrons? Sage? Ha! A low and hoarse voice came out of Lin Yuan's mouth, and immediately, his tone rose. When the human race goes against the heavens and fights for the heavenly mandate, even if the front is beyond redemption, we should still move forward and usurp the heavens to change our fate. The 9 cauldrons are the important weapons of the human tribe. Under the suppression of the fate of the human tribe, even if the opponent is a sage, so what? Seeing the supreme treasure of the human tribe, even a sage has to kneel before me. You are. Hearing this, Bo Ikao's face suddenly changed. But Yin Hong, who was watching the battle from the side, turned pale instantly. He also stared at Lin Yuan, who was standing straight like a javelin, on the arena without blinking. He inexplicably felt that the tip of his nose was a little sore, and his vision gradually blurred. That voice did not belong to Lin Yuan. He was the king of a generation in the ancient times. Angry Immortal demanded too much and roared, "If the sage does not die, the robbers will not stop." He fought until the divine power was almost destroyed in the Shang dynasty. With the body of a mortal, he suppressed all the gods and Buddhas in the sky. The last king of the Shang dynasty, Xian. Chapter 12:24. I'll only use one punch. You can comprehend as much as you can. There's prosperity and decline in the world. I don't care if the Shang dynasty is destroyed or if the gods and Buddhas are rampant. I only hope that everyone in this world has the heart of a king. I hope that the prosperity of the human race will never disappear. I hope that the human race will stand tall in this world. Under the control of the mighty force, Lin Yuan slowly raised his right hand. In an instant, endless power gathered at the tip of his fist. Lin Yuan seemed to hear countless voices in the unseen world. Some were cursing, some were thanking, and some were praying. It was as if a picture scroll had appeared before his eyes. It was a battle against the heavens, the gods, and the people. He kept promoting the talents at the bottom of the hierarchy, suppressing the officials and the gods so that they could not raise their heads. He gave all the talented people a stage to display their talents. He found a better habitat for his people, hunted beasts, built houses, and developed the barren mountains and forests into prosperous cities. Xian's life was quickly displayed before Lin Yuan's eyes. In the end, the fast-forwarded image stopped at the day when the Shang dynasty's army set out to the south. Lin Yuan, who had some understanding of this period of history, knew that this was the most important battle in Xian's life. It was also the last battle he fought for his people as the king of Huaxia. At that time, the Shang dynasty was in the Little Ice Age. The so-called Little Ice Age referred to the drastic drop in global temperature, which led to the reduction of food production, migration of wild beasts, floods, droughts, hailstorms, locusts, earthquakes, windstorms, frost, and plagues. In the face of such disasters, everyone would die if they did not migrate to a warmer place. Therefore, after Xian went through a series of struggles to suppress the gods and the officials, all the feudal lords were scared witless. All of them longed for another person to sit on the throne. At the critical juncture, Xian resolutely chose to lead the army to the south just to fulfill his duty as the king of Huaxia. He wanted to find a place for his people to settle down. This battle could be said to be the peak of the military. According to some historical records, Xian's expedition to the south had expanded the Shang dynasty's territory by at least 5 times. And then, King Shang was stuffed to death. The fall of the Shang dynasty was actually similar to the fall of the Qin dynasty. Qin Shi Huang conquered the eastern barbarians, the southern barbarians, the western barbarians, and the northern barbarians. He left all the troops of the state of Qin on the battlefield to suppress the foreign tribes. Until the reign of Emperor Wu of Han, there were still troops wearing the armor of the state of Qin in Lingnan. Almost all of them were the descendants of the soldiers who suppressed the barbarians during the Qin dynasty. Other places were also suppressed by the troops of the state of Qin. Before the death of Qin Shi Huang, he even took the initiative to order these troops not to return no matter what happened in the country. If the state of Qin perished, they were allowed to be kings on the spot. As a result, after Hu Hai ascended to the throne, rebel armies rose up all over the country. Just as they were about to reach Xianying city, Zhang Han had no choice but to form an army with his concubines and prisoners to fight them off. The destruction of Yinshang was also due to this. King Shang had expanded his territory by more than 5 times. Although he had made great military achievements, the problem he was facing now was even more severe. After all, there were countless vassals in the country who wanted to pull him down from the throne, and there were more new territories abroad waiting to be developed. Under such circumstances, King Shang's decision was to leave the elite troops in the newly conquered territories to suppress the rebels, while he only brought some injured soldiers back to Zhaoga, escorting some of the slaves he had plundered through the war. Even so, King Shang had defeated the allied vassals time and time again through his tactics and military strategy. Lin Yuan saw that the allied vassals were burdened by the slaves abandoned by King Shang. Their already stretched rations were almost depleted, and they were faced with Zhaoga, which was built like a war fortress by the successive kings of Yinshang. Not to mention that Lin Yuan had been through many wars. Even a newbie who had never eaten pork would know that the allied vassals would fail due to the lack of rations if there were no accidents. But King Shang lost. The ministers he trusted were traitors, his uncles were traitors, his brothers were traitors, his empress, and his children were all traitors. Therefore, with an absolute advantage, the gates of Zhaoga were opened by a bunch of traitors. The allied vassals, who were starving, swarmed in. They burned, killed, and plundered all the way to the palace. The scene froze again. This time, King Shang appeared in front of Lin Yuan's eyes. He was already standing on Jiaxing Tower, which was filled with rations and supplies. A huge fire soared into the sky. The wealth that Yinshang had accumulated over the years and the resources plundered from the south were all burned in the fire. Suddenly, Lin Yuan seemed to see King Shang's soul appear on the ruined Jiaxing Tower, laughing wildly at the ashen-faced Jiang Zia and GFA. Without wealth and food, it meant that GFA's dream of conquering the world and ascending to the throne had been shattered. To appease Wu Geng, GFA even took the initiative to return Yinshang's ancestral land and the remaining people to Wu Geng. He even conferred Wu Geng, who should have been exterminated, as a feudal lord. On the other hand, Yin Hong and Yin Jiao, the traitors, were killed on the spot to vent their anger. Finally, he sat on the throne that symbolized the supremacy of the human world. He looked up and saw the vassals who were as powerful as him, or even more powerful than him. For 800 years, GFA, Ji Gongming, Ji Yan, Datong, Western Zhou, and Eastern Zhou did not improve. Instead, their territories became smaller and their lives became worse and worse. In the end, they were destroyed by Qin's state. They still called themselves the Emperor of Zhou or the King of Zhou. In contrast, King Shang of Yinshang before the Zhou dynasty and the first Emperor of Qin dynasty after the Zhou dynasty, how ridiculous was it? The picture scroll in front of him was destroyed. Lin Yuan slowly stretched out his fist. It was a simple punch. From the outside, there was nothing fancy about it. However, after such a punch was thrown, the 9 cauldrons were destroyed and the mountains and rivers were turned upside down. Bo Yicao's twisted face was still full of surprise, but he could not even react. He was directly blown into nothingness by this punch. This punch is called the Human King. The low and hoarse voice sounded again, and immediately, the huge power that was controlling Lin Yuan suddenly dissipated. At this moment, Lin Yuan only felt that his heart was empty, and he even had a feeling of wanting to cry. The Human King was the most supreme existence in the world. It could be said that when the Human King was angry, the heaven and earth would collapse. However, at the same time, the Human King was the most sorrowful existence in the world. Because what he said and did was for the longevity of the human race and the world. When he worked towards this goal, his former companions would become his enemies. Even his wife and children would eventually stand on the opposite side. Looking around, he only felt that everything in the world belonged to him, but he did not seem to belong to this world. Chapter 12:25. Lamentable, lamentable, pitiful yet respectable. The words "a loner" were the most suitable to describe the human king. No one would understand him and no one would get close to him. Every person he saw when he opened his eyes every day was his enemy or a potential enemy. When he was sad, he did not even have anyone to talk to. He had to keep his eyes open even when he slept. This was because the human king always knew that when he gave an order, he would fight for the interests of countless commoners and also infringe on the interests of countless influential officials. People would change. Especially those talents and scholars who kept saying that they would serve the country and the people. Once they were in the imperial court, what they said before would be no different from farts. Because at this time, they were no longer the poor students who had problems even eating. They were the influential officials who stood in the imperial court and at the top of the food chain in the imperial court. They could decide the life and death of countless people with one word. If the human king wanted to fight for the interests of the commoners, the interests of these influential officials would be reduced. Even if some things did not belong to them in the first place, it would not stop them from seizing and making the things that they fancied their own. It was really tiring and lonely to deal with these people day in and day out. The scholars who were like-minded the day before became his new opponents the moment he put on the official's robe. Everyone in the world was his enemy. However, he could never stop. This was because as the human king, he had to promote the progress of the entire human race and make the human race stronger and stronger. Only in this way could he ensure that the main character of every era was the human race. He would not be like the three races after the beginning of the world, followed by the shaman and demon race after that. After that, he would directly withdraw from the stage of the world and be replaced by a new race. This is the human king? Lin Yuan murmured. He looked into the distance and said from the bottom of his heart, "May the human race exist with the world forever." Lin Yuan, why do you want the real spirit karma position map? Could it be, after everything was settled and he left the arena, the system appeared to communicate with Lin Yuan again? Lin Yuan let out a long breath. There was a faint smile on his face. As his eyes moved, it was like the stars were flickering. At the same time, far away in the void of space, a bronze coffin that floated in the endless sea of bitterness trembled slightly. A moment later, a loud laugh rang out from the coffin. With just this laugh, over a dozen minor worlds in the vicinity collapsed and collapsed. Countless living beings were crushed by the terrifying pressure, leaving only a wisp of Xiantian qi, which was then extracted by an invisible force. Just like the Xiantian qi of the other living beings, the Xiantian qi gathered into a milky white river and poured into the bronze coffin. The bronze coffin shook even more violently, as if the thing inside was about to break out of the coffin at any moment. At this moment, a jade-white hand extended out of nowhere and gently touched the bronze coffin. The vibration of the bronze coffin stopped abruptly. A white-robed young man with sword-like eyebrows walked out of the void and sat cross-legged on the bronze coffin. He looked in the direction of the Tianwu world and muttered, "Soon, soon. It's just that I don't know if you'll still." The voice gradually drifted away. The young man sitting on the bronze coffin had a faint smile on his face. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the sea of misery with the bronze coffin. On the other side, after obtaining the 3 lives stone and the true spirit karma position map, Lin Yuan's consciousness dissipated on its own. His vision turned black and then bright, and he returned to his main body in the Tianwu world. "Io, my Lord Dragon King, you're finally awake. The allied army formed by the outer sea monsters is about to reach this palace." The crab boss appeared in front of Lin Yuan with a frown. His aura was weak, as if he had been heavily injured. Even his Demon King realm was somewhat unstable, constantly jumping between the desolate Demon realm and the Demon King realm. Lin Yuan was certain that if the crab boss didn't recuperate properly, it wouldn't take long for him to fall from the Demon King realm. He might be stuck in the desolate demon realm for the rest of his life. What's going on? Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and looked at the crab boss. Boss Crab saw that Lin Yuan's face was full of indifference. Although he was anxious at the moment, he didn't know why, but his heart gradually calmed down. It seemed that as long as the black dragon took action, all the problems would not be a problem. Half an hour ago, the endless sea had suddenly been unsealed. The outer sea monsters had suddenly attacked and caught the dragon bloodline demonic beasts off guard. The two sides had then engaged in a fierce battle. The dragon bloodline demonic beasts had suffered heavy losses. If not for the help of a few ancestral demon ancestors, the dragon bloodline demonic beasts at the front line would have been wiped out. However, although the dragon bloodline demonic beasts had stabilized the defensive line, they had also left behind millions of corpses. The originally weak defensive line had once again become weak. Many outer sea monsters took the opportunity to break through the defensive line formed by the dragon bloodline demonic beasts and massacred the nearby sea regions. One of the groups of outer sea monsters didn't even stop and headed straight for the city of trade. Fortunately, these outer sea monsters couldn't use the teleportation formation to directly attack the city of trade. Otherwise, this place would have fallen long ago. Flood Dragon 1, Taimu, Cyrus, and the other experts of the city of trade fought against the outer sea monsters. All of them suffered heavy injuries and were forced to retreat. Taimu even had two of his pincers broken by an outer sea monster that looked like an octopus. Even the crab boss, a merchant, had no choice but to fight a few rounds with the enemy. However, he was still forced to retreat. Now, they were only relying on the defensive formation outside the palace to deal with the enemy. However, if this continued, it would only be a matter of time before they fell. Therefore, the crab boss appeared outside Lin Yuan's palace. He wanted to see if he could awaken Lin Yuan and see if Lin Yuan had a solution. Got it. Lin Yuan replied indifferently. His eyes turned slightly, and a large amount of nether realm black water was secreted from his scales. When the nether realm black water fell to the ground, it turned into various black sea monsters. Without needing Lin Yuan to call them, they directly rushed out of the palace. Lin Yuan leisurely moved his body and followed behind these nether river sea monsters. He murmured, "The god-worshipping sect is much more narrow-minded than I thought." They seized the opportunity and directly rushed to the city of trade. Hee, do they really think I'm a pushover? The god-worshipping sect? The crab boss, who was following behind Lin Yuan, was slightly startled. A trace of fear flashed through his round eyes. It seemed that he had never imagined that the group of outer sea monsters that had set their eyes on the city of trade was actually the god-worshipping sect that was rumored to be strong enough to compete with the Dragon Temple. Chapter 12:26. In the chaos of the endless sea, no one knew what role the god-worship sect played. But strictly speaking, since the god-worship sect was a major force in the endless sea, it was impossible for them to go with the flow. As long as one wasn't a real fool, one wouldn't believe that the god-worship sect was simply invited by the outer sea monsters to help. But later on, things changed again. Because of the greed of the mutant, he lured the heavenly court into the situation, trying to provoke a war between the heavenly court and the god-worship sect so that he could eat the fat meat of the endless sea. Or rather, he wanted the guardian of the heavenly gate behind him to eat this fat meat. It was because of this greed that the god-worship sect and the heavenly court were still entangled, but the guardian of the heavenly gate represented by the mutant had already been kicked out of the game. The current situation was nothing more than the god-worship sect wanting to use Lin Yuan as a weapon to deal with the heavenly court, but in the end, they were defeated by Lin Yuan. Unable to swallow their anger, they turned around and cooperated with the heavenly court to attack the dragon blood monsters. After all, Lin Yuan's body was now in the endless sea, the city of trade and the foundation of the gray-scaled flood dragon people were also here. As long as the outer sea monsters could break through the defense of the dragon blood monsters, no matter what Lin Yuan thought, he would have to fight, and the god-worship sect would still be able to reap the benefits. But the god-worship sect had an untainted background after all, and knowing that the heavenly court was not to be trifled with, it was inevitable that they would have some doubts. At that time, whether or not the Church of Gods could have the last laugh would depend on how intense the battle between Lin Yuan and the heavenly court was. If both sides were in a killing frenzy, it would naturally be excellent if both sides suffered heavy losses. However, if the winner did not suffer heavy losses, then the plan of the Church of Gods could be said to be in vain. Therefore, before the heavenly court arrived in front of Lin Yuan, the God worship sect had to make a series of emergency measures. For example, they had to force Lin Yuan into a dead end first. Just like now. Lin Yuan could conclude that at this moment, most of the demonic beasts outside the city of trade were under the command of the God worship religion. Even if a few of them were kidnapped, they should be the original demonic beasts of the outer sea. No existence of the heavenly court participated in this assault. These bastards wanted to first destroy the city of trade and slaughter the gray-scaled flood dragon people so that Lin Yuan would be enraged and lead the dragon bloodline demonic beasts to fight to the death with the heavenly court. This was a very simple plan, so simple that it could be seen through at a glance. However, this was also considered an open conspiracy. After all, Lin Yuan had spent a lot of time and effort in the endless sea. He absolutely couldn't accept the result of leaving with his tail between his legs. Thus, Lin Yuan would definitely fight to the end. Lin Yuan's character was like that. Even if he didn't have a good time, he wouldn't let the enemy laugh at him. So what if Lin Yuan saw through it? If he wanted to take revenge on the House of Gods, he would have to deal with the heavenly court first. Even if the heavenly court couldn't just watch the God worship sect shrink back, the heavenly court was after all Hongjuan's subordinate. Their primary goal was to kill him, an existence related to Hongjuan's death tribulation. If the God worship sect really shrank back, the heavenly court would still have to step in. Even the heavenly court didn't really care about the endless sea. The reason they appeared here was not because of the strange man's request, but because they were originally here to deal with Lin Yuan. At this time, the heavenly court wouldn't casually fall out with the God worship sect. Because the God worship sect was really difficult to deal with, and Lin Yuan was just as difficult to deal with. If these two sides joined forces, even if the heavenly court didn't leave any trump cards this time, they still wouldn't have the confidence to defeat either of them. While thinking, Lin Yuan had already arrived outside the palace. The first thing he saw was the battle going on. According to the original design of the City of Trade, the main defensive target was actually the interior of the city. Although the four walls were made of willow stone, the reason why the willow stone Great Wall was able to withstand the endless flood of outer sea monsters was because of the elite dragon bloodline monster beasts guarding the Great Wall, and the fact that the Great Wall had an excellent array formation around it. If it was just a towering mountain pass, the enemy would have a way to climb over it. The City of Trade was originally not a war fortress. The four walls here were not so much for military purposes, but for a variety of expensive equipment that could be used in the depths of the endless sea. After all, who could expect the enemy to face a city with a transmission formation inside and still attack the city from the outside? Such an enemy probably didn't exist. If it did, there were only three possibilities. The first was that the enemy was so stupid that they didn't know what was good for them, and insisted on using their own bodies to test which of the willow stone walls was harder. The second was that they were quite confident in their own strength, and didn't need to resort to trickery, and could just crush the enemy head-on. Of course, there was also the last special case, which was that their relationship with the people in the endless sea was really too bad. Even if they wanted to take advantage of the situation, they couldn't enter the City of Trade through the transmission formation. Under the name of the Outer Sea Monster Beasts, the God Worship sect, which had temporarily organized the monster beasts, might have met all three of the conditions. Lin Yuan's gaze swept across the small battlefields, and he had a general understanding of the level of these Outer Sea Monster Beasts. The City of Trade had set up many residential areas to house the gray-scaled flood dragon people. In other words, rather than calling them residential areas, it was better to call them small strongholds that resembled military stations. All kinds of mechanisms and secret passages had been set up. When he was designing them, Lin Yuan's requirement was that even if the monster kings came to the City of Trade to cause trouble, they couldn't kill their way out of the residential areas within 4 hours without using the transmission formation. The small fries of the outer sea monster beasts below the Monster King realm were locked in a fierce battle with the gray-scaled flood dragon people in the residential areas. However, there were also about 30 monster kings who were madly charging towards the palace. After all, they had the advantage in terms of cultivation base. Even if the gray-scaled flood dragon people were well equipped, they only needed to force their way in. Once they opened up a passage, the outer sea monster beasts they brought over would naturally entangle the gray-scaled flood dragon people who couldn't surround them again. Therefore, in general, although the outer sea monster beasts suffered more casualties, they were still advancing steadily. We're still lacking a lot of high-end combat power. Lin Yuan sighed. He coiled his body in front of the palace and looked at the approaching monster kings with an extremely cold gaze. The monster kings in the city of trade were Cyrus, Tai Wu, and its two brothers, as well as Boss Crab. Originally, there were also the monster king experts from the Siren Guild stationed in the city of trade. However, as the situation at the front lines worsened, they were also transferred away. Being able to hold off the army led by more than 30 monster kings with such strength was already a small surprise for Lin Yuan. However, this was still far from Lin Yuan's expectations. After all, the outer sea monster beasts, the Four Seas Dragon Clan, the Siren Guild, and even some large-scale Siren clans could all bring out more than 30 monster kings. Chapter 12:27. It was true that the times created heroes, but this did not mean that these heroes would not exist in peacetime. Nothing in this world would appear for no reason. Just like after the change of the Shinwu dynasty, talents appeared in the northern frontier. Now that the endless sea was in chaos, there would naturally be many ruthless characters who would take advantage of the situation. For example, Cao Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Jian in the Eastern Han dynasty were all examples. The endless sea was destined to not be peaceful in the future because no matter who won this war, the remaining forces would not be able to maintain absolute control of the endless sea, unless they were ruthless enough to wipe out the entire endless sea and pull all the forces back to the line of balance. But that was obviously impossible. No force could withstand a war of this scale. The dragon tribe of the Four Seas could not, nor could the Sea Demon Guild. Even if they joined forces, it would be difficult. Not to mention that the current situation in the endless sea was strange and unpredictable. The heavenly court, Lin Yuan, the god-worshipping religion, the guardian of the heavenly gate, and even some big shots who had yet to show up were all involved. Before the real winner emerged from the competition, the endless sea could not be peaceful even if it wanted to. In fact, if it were not for the god-worshipping sect and the heavenly court, Lin Yuan would not have minded the endless sea being ruled by the demonic beasts from the outer sea. That would also be beneficial to his plan on the Tianwu continent. After all, even if he had the system, he did not have such an appetite. If he really had such a stupid idea, he would not have reached where he was today. The demonic beasts from the outer sea and the dragon blood demonic beasts were well aware of this. Therefore, they just wanted to exclude Lin Yuan from this circle and not let him have a foothold in the endless sea. However, this did not mean that they would casually kill Lin Yuan. But now, with all the forces involved, the situation had developed to the point where it was out of control. Even with Lin Yuan's current strength, he had to deal with it carefully. If he did not take care of it now, when the world was repaired, who knew what level of killing weapon the endless sea would prepare for him? Black Jiao, when you helped us take down the Great Wall of Willow Shire, we even treated you as a friend. Humph. You don't know what's good for you. You actually colluded with a dragon bloodline demonic beast. Since that's the case, today will be the day you die. A round demon king that looked like a seal extended a short claw and pointed at Lin Yuan. The malice in its eyes was so thick that it almost solidified. Say that only if you can kill your way to this king. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth widened, revealing a sinister smile. Then, with a light flick of its tail, a golden cloth slowly unfurled behind it. At the same time, the power of heaven and earth buzzed, and in an instant, it completed the synchronization with Lin Yuan. I am the Dragon King of the Northern Frontier, Lin Yuan. Holding the post-celestial merit treasure, the Dongxian spiritual treasure, the real spirit karma position map, I shall become a god on behalf of the heavens and establish my own divine court. Batu is hereby conferred as the great war god of the northern frontier. He enjoys the fortune of the northern frontier, suppresses the northern frontier, and commands the divine power of the war realm. Kagura is hereby conferred as the rice god of the northern frontier. She enjoys the fortune of the northern frontier. She enjoys the fortune of the northern frontier, and commands the divine power of the grain harvest. Jiao Yi is hereby conferred as the sea god of the Willow-Shire region of the Endless Sea. He suppresses the sea region, and commands the divine power of the sea region. Tai Kuang, Tai Zhan, and Tai Mang are hereby conferred as the war gods of the Willow-Shire region of the Endless Sea. They establish the sea god army, and protect the safety of the sea region. Cyrus is hereby conferred as the conspiracy god of the Willow-Shire region. He is responsible for strategizing in the Willow-Shire region. His superior is the sea god, and his subordinate is Li Shu. Lin Yuan opened his mouth to speak. The power of heaven and earth hummed, forming a sound of hope. Although it was inaudible, Lin Yuan's words appeared in the mind of every living creature in the Tianwu world. With the completion of Lin Yuan's conferment, 5 names and the corresponding positions of gods suddenly appeared on the golden cloth behind him. This was the power of the map of real spirit karma position. Although it was only an acquired merit spiritual treasure, no one dared to question the power of the map of real spirit karma position. To put it bluntly, if Bo Yikao had not been so useless, Tai Sheng and Haotian would not have had a chance to compete in the heavenly court. With the map of real spirit karma position, one could establish a divine court, regardless of whether the heavenly way recognized it or not. Just like now, the Tianwu world had not been completed yet. There was no heavenly court or netherworld. Whether it was the Een god's general soul that was worshipped by the various dynasties or the demonic beasts that used the power of incense to prolong their lives, they were all so-called false gods. Before the divine path appeared, they could call themselves gods and enjoy the power of incense. But with the birth of Shinto, these false gods suddenly became unrecognized as obscene offerings. That was to say, they didn't follow the ritual system and didn't offer sacrifices. This kind of sacrifice often quickly declined after the birth of Shinto because there were rules to it. Obscene offerings didn't receive much incense power. Just like what was recorded in the Book of Rites, truly, the worship that was not meant for worship was called false worship. False worship was not a blessing. Of course, this practice also forced a large number of wild gods and evil gods to appear in the world. Just like the neon in the previous life, with the decline of their divine path, most of the once glorious 8 million gods, except for a few who were recognized as orthodox, had degenerated into monsters that committed crimes everywhere. This was also the reason why monster culture was prevalent in Neon. Putting aside the mythological background, it was the fanatics who believed in gods that weren't listed in the orthodox tradition who were doing evil or spreading rumors. But with the mythological background, it meant that after these false gods lost the power of incense, they could only use another method to maintain their own existence. The so-called power of incense was the power of will. No matter if it was respect or fear, it was a type of power of incense. Although the quality of the power of incense was too poor, it was better to harvest it easily and in large quantities. But similarly, the false gods who relied on fear to exist didn't have much divine power due to the quality of the power of incense. Each was weaker than the last. It was also because of this that the monsters in Neon were so weak. Any warrior who had practiced swordsmanship for more than 10 years could accomplish the feat of killing a god or a great monster in Neon. Why don't you try doing something like this in Yanhuang? What a joke. Yanhuang did not have many wild gods. Existences like White Lotus were all fabricated by ambitious people. They just used the name of faith to gather ignorant people to satisfy their own ambitions. From Lin Yuan's perspective, of the 8 million gods in Japan, only Shutendaji and Daitengu were worthy of his attention. As for Tamamonome, it was hard to say if she existed. After all, her template was similar to the Zhou dynasty's Daji and India's Huayangshan. Whether it was identity, story, or actions, there was no difference between the three. If Tamamonome really existed, there was a high chance that she was Daji. At the very least, there should be some kind of connection between them. Chapter 1228. Speaking of the nine-tailed fox, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of the fox girl Kagura from the northern frontier. Although Kagura was a demi-human, she still had the fox tribe's bloodline. Although Seiji didn't know which branch she belonged to, she now had a divine position. Logically speaking, she should have become an eternal existence. As long as he invested enough divine power and resources, it wouldn't be long before he would be able to raise a nine-tailed fox loyal to him. The nine-tailed fox, in many strange stories, only had a cultivation of about 1,000 years. It was considered a great demon, but it was not considered the peak. However, that was the nine-tailed demon fox, not the nine-tailed fox. The difference between the two was huge. In terms of combat power, a cultivator in the Aurus core stage could probably kill a demon fox. However, the nine-tailed fox was different. Looking at the battle record of the nine-tailed fox, the battle between Qiyu and Shenyuan destroyed the entire Green Hill. Only Daji survived the battle. After that, it was the era ruled by Shenyuan. After that, the power was transferred from the 3 kings to the 5 emperors. Diyu established the first dynasty, the Xia dynasty. After 471 years, it was replaced by the Shang dynasty. After another 554 years, it was killed by Dxian. It was also the first tribulation with humans as the protagonists after the human race stepped onto the world stage, the investiture of the gods' tribulation. The investiture of the gods' tribulation was an era where golden immortals walked on the ground and Daluo was inferior to dogs. In the later stages of the battle, Tongtian, Taishang, Yuanshi, and the Western Buddhists personally participated. According to the description of the investiture of the gods, even Nuwa participated. Although she did not end up like the other 5 heavenly saints, according to the original book, Daji was arranged by Nuwa to be by Nuwa's side. However, looking at the history, the most interesting thing was that Daji was not a demon concubine. Instead, she was Dxian's good wife. Although her son did not overthrow the rule of the Zhou dynasty, he preserved the bloodline of the Shang dynasty under the influence of Dxian. Later on, the Ying family that destroyed the bloodline of the Zhou dynasty and established the Great Qin Empire was the bloodline left behind by Lai and Fei Lian of the Shang dynasty. On the other hand, the Empress Jiang, who was greatly praised by the Zhou dynasty, was a theocratic aristocrat through and through. If one were to combine the background of the era, it would not be an exaggeration to call the Empress Jiang a lackey of the heavenly axiom. Even the 2 sons she gave birth to were traitors who caused the destruction of the Shang dynasty. Therefore, there was no need to doubt who Nuwa favored in that calamity. That was the holy mother of the human race. However, she was not as radical as Tongtian and did not know about Sanqing's internal scheme. Therefore, she only helped Yin Shang and did not directly join the battle with the other 5 sages. Otherwise, did she really think that Shingongbao was so influential that he could command all the demons in the world to die for Yin Shang with a demon summoning banner? Rather than the power of the demon summoning banner itself, it was more accurate to say that it was because the original owner of the demon summoning banner, Nuwa, had a great reputation. Even if one only looked at these 2 battle records, Daji was a peerless demon who had saved her life from Shenyuan and Qiyu. She had shown extraordinary talents in the investiture of God's cataclysm and retreated unscathed. After all, from what happened to Huayang Tian and Tamamo no Mei, Jiang Zia did not catch Daji at all. Moreover, Daji had also announced her existence in India and Japan. Compared to the 9-tailed demon fox that could be killed by cultivators who had cultivated for tens or hundreds of years, although the 9-tailed demon fox lacked one word, the power of the 2 could not be mentioned in the same breath. However, although the map of real spirit karma position was terrifying and could allow one to establish a heavenly court without being recognized by the heavenly axiom, it was not completely without restrictions. For example, when one held the map of real spirit karma position to confer the title of a god, although cultivation and merit were disregarded, one could only confer the place controlled by the holder of the treasure. Although the position of a god was fixed, in essence, it was still in existence like a mountain god or a river god. Its power could only be exerted in the place where it was conferred. If one wanted to become an existence comparable to the heavenly court's immortals, they had to wait until Lin Yuan unified the world before they were promoted. However, this was enough. After the conferment, Jiao Yi, Cyrus, and the 3 brothers of the brave crab tribe all silently appeared behind Lin Yuan. Not only had they recovered from their previous injuries, the moment Lin Yuan conferred them the title, they had also received authorization from Lin Yuan. With the power of more than 300 million incense, they could defeat more than 30 demon kings with just one hand. In contrast to Lin Yuan's relaxed and comfortable side, the top experts of the entire Tianwu world went crazy. What was that just now? That was King conferment. Although the current Tianwu world was not complete, the top cultivators had indeed touched the threshold of immortality. They were only one step away from immortality. What they desired the most now was not power and wealth, but to truly be recognized by the world will and become a god of the Tianwu world. But now, a god had appeared. Furthermore, it was the Black Jiao who had personally conferred the title, and even received the recognition and resonance of the world will. In other words, the Black Jiao had only moved his mouth, and 5 existences that they had never even heard of had directly become gods above them. What kind of ability was this? This was the ability of their father. If it was said that the originally flourishing northern frontier had attracted countless talented heroes to join the northern frontier, then after Lin Yuan officially displayed his ability to confer god, the top experts of the Tianwu world all wanted to join Lin Yuan. After all, he only needed to move his mouth, and they would be able to achieve the goal that countless people had been unable to achieve. In life, who didn't want to take 1 or 2 shortcuts? Especially when, as long as he took this shortcut, he would be able to achieve immortality in an instant. Boiling, shocking, exploding, almost at the instant the conferment ended, countless tyrannical auras suddenly rose. Even some old monsters who had lived in seclusion for many years could not help but come out of the forests and forbidden areas, constantly looking for their former disciples, wanting to see if they could establish a relationship with the northern frontier. Even more exaggerated was the current situation in the Endless Sea. The auras of not less than 100 ancestral monster experts were rapidly approaching the city of trade. Even among the more than 30 monster kings who had joined forces to suppress Lin Yuan, more than a dozen monster kings betrayed them and killed their comrades around them. The temptation of becoming a god was so terrifying. However, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he suppressed the joy in his heart. How could it be so simple to confer god? It was true that the chart of real spirit merit points in his hands could confer god, but after all, it was a merit treasure. Compared to the investiture of the gods, which had been refined by Hong Jun, the purpose of which was to control the heavenly court and gods, its function was much more powerful, but it did not have the ability to control the gods on the chart of real spirit merit points. In other words, Lin Yuan did not have the intention to confer god casually. Chapter 1229. In addition, there was a limit to becoming a god. Lin Yuan had just gotten the map of true spirit karma position, so the system gave him a benefit. If one wanted to use the map of true spirit karma position to become a god, he had to worship the sky, the earth, the mountains, the lakes, and the sea. He had to worship the place where he wanted to become a god, just like how workers had to submit their resumes when they were looking for a job. Although he had the map of true spirit karma position, he could force himself to take the position through the back door, but he still had to follow the etiquette. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if he was hated by the will of the world. Besides, since he had to follow the etiquette, he still had to do the inspection. Becoming a god was very metaphysical. It was different from becoming a god naturally when one's cultivation reached a certain level in fantasy novels. A real god had to be recognized by the heavens and the earth. Like some of the supernatural novels in Lin Yuan's previous life, only the real gods could become a god as long as one's ability and virtue met the requirements of becoming a god. Even a mortal could become a god, such as Song Dao who became a city god and Bao Zheng who broke the netherworld. Of course, since the map of true spirit karma position was in Lin Yuan's hands, in addition to virtue, one had to be loyal to Lin Yuan to become a god. Well, the requirements were not high. If you were as loyal as Fang Yu, let alone a martial saint, you could even be a celestial emperor. As for those who only wanted benefits and did nothing, I suggest you go to bed early. You can have everything in your dreams. At the same time, far away in the imperial palace of Shichi, GFA, who was wearing a white robe and a black robe, overturned the table with fruits in front of him. His handsome face was distorted. He stared at the direction of the boundless sea and roared, "Black Jiao, you've gone too far." GFA had never been weaker than anyone in his life. Whether it was appointing Jiang Zia and the immortal disciples of the Chan sect and the human sect, or subduing the feudal lords to fight against the Shang dynasty, he still gritted his teeth and walked to the end, even though the road ahead was dangerous and unpredictable. He was the one who had the last laugh. However, he had only felt aggrieved once in his life. The fire that burned down Zhaixing Lu and the 500 years of accumulation of Yin Shang had directly shattered his dream of becoming an emperor. Later on, he faked his death and abdicated to begin his cultivation. Although Uncle Guan, Uncle Kai, and Uncle Hu joined forces with Wu Geng to cause a rebellion of the three directorates, which almost destroyed the Zhou dynasty, and later on, powerful officials such as the Duke of Zhou appeared to control the government, it only made him a little dissatisfied, but he did not feel anything else. After all, immortality was the most important thing to GFA back then. As for Dynasty's foundation, he had already gotten over it. Later, GFA came to the world of heaven and martial arts by chance. He found that the three Daos of heaven, earth, and man were not born in this world, so he immediately started to plan. Not only did he create West Qi, but he also created a small celestial court according to the model of the untainted land. As the will of the world grew stronger day by day, he was selected as the first celestial emperor. If he continued to develop at this pace, he even had a 60% chance of imitating Hongjuan's style in the future, stealing the way of heaven of this world and becoming a supreme ruler. But it just had to be this time. When the will of the world was about to be completed, Lin Yuan actually rushed to establish a celestial court in front of him. Although this did not affect his position as the celestial emperor, it was impossible to say that it did not affect him at all. Taking advantage of the time difference, Lin Yuan's celestial court could select most of the top talents in the world of heaven and martial arts even with his eyes closed, leaving a bunch of ugly melons and cracked dates that the Black Jiao did not like to be the immortals of his celestial court. When the time came, not to mention stealing the way of heaven, even when competing for incense, whether the celestial court could beat the celestial court was a problem. This was called intercepting the celestial court's victory. What was the difference between this and the years when Xian burned the savings of the Shang dynasty and left him with a devastated land and shattered his dream of becoming the emperor? Even after the ancient times, the descendants would only evaluate him as King Wu of the Zhou dynasty. But so what if the emperor of the Shang dynasty was smeared as an eternal tyrant by him? Wasn't he still respectfully called Xian? Bang! He also wanted to be respectfully called DFA. Burning with anger, GFA's originally white and gentle skin turned red as if it was plated with a layer of blood. His face was distorted to the extreme as he roared hoarsely, "Pass down my order, the entire West Qi army begins to prepare. I want to destroy the Tianlan dynasty within half a year and then directly march to the Yun nation. I want to see if West Qi can compete with the puppet king on the northern frontier for the vacant position of the human king." GFA was also a person behind the scenes. Although he couldn't deduce most of Lin Yuan's overall plan, some superficial things couldn't escape his eyes. Currently, the Black Jiao had obtained the ability to confer deities. Including the establishment of the pseudo-god system on the northern frontier, the establishment of the god's court, and the official conferment of deities, Lin Yuan didn't include the human experts under his command twice in a row. If it was someone else, it might be due to the issue of loyalty, but conferring the title of god on Li Zhong wasn't a problem. After all, everything that Li Zhong had now came from Lin Yuan's trust and he had indeed gone through the test. However, Lin Yuan had missed out on Li Zhong twice in a row. This forced him to think about it one more time. It was obvious that the Black Jiao wasn't an honest person. While he decided on the position of god of the underworld, he also tried to make the northern frontier become the human power that ruled the Tianwu world. Then, he pushed Li Zhong to the position of human king. Even if Li Zhong also became one of the rulers of the three realms, the current situation would still be maintained. He didn't dare to say that when the time came, Li Zhong would still listen to Lin Yuan's words. However, as long as the two sides maintained a good relationship, it was enough to be a fatal threat to him, the Celestial Emperor. Not to mention, Lin Yuan had also established his own god's court and opened the path to deification before the heavenly court. He'd schemed for so many years and paid so many prices for this game of chess, yet he suddenly realized that if he were to continue watching from behind the scenes, then he would probably be kicked out by the Black Flood Dragon before he could even make it to the next stage. GFA didn't have many good ways to deal with Lin Yuan. He could only imitate the heavenly court of the chaotic world. After establishing a firm foothold, he could set up a Fengdu hell to seize the authority of the netherworld and suppress the status of the netherworld. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan wasn't the Empress Pingxin who was trapped in the netherworld. He also wasn't a rare existence like Hong Jun. He didn't know if he would be a match for the Black Jiao. Therefore, the most important thing at the moment was to stop Li Zhong from becoming the human king. Even if he defeated the Shiqi dynasty and suffered heavy losses with the northern frontier, benefiting the rulers of the other dynasties, he still had to fight to the death with the northern frontier. Chapter 1230. Although he knew that the top experts in the heavenly martial world were staring at him, Lin Yuan was not moved at all. The world was bustling with activity. Everyone came for benefits and left for benefits. He did not even need to open his mouth. He only needed to express his intentions and there would be countless experts who would help him deal with it properly. If the other party was after something else, Lin Yuan would definitely agree to it. However, this time, the other party was after the deity position in his hands. To be honest, there was no upper limit to the number of gods that could be conferred. A mountain or a river could confer 2 gods. However, it was never a good thing for the number of gods to increase. After all, it was related to the gods. No matter what, it could not be avoided. As the saying goes, humans fight for their dignity, Buddhas fight for their incense. Sometimes, for the power of incense, some immortals would do things that were even worse than demons and ghosts. For example, in Chapter 87 of Journey to the West, there was no rain in Fengxian County for 3 years. The Jade Emperor even set up 3 difficult problems: chicken eating rice, dog licking noodles, and fire burning locks. Only then would Fengxian County rain again. The cause of the entire incident was a quarrel between a military couple in Fengxian County. Coincidentally, they overturned the table that was enshrined in the Jade Emperor. Coincidentally, there was a dog that ate the offerings that fell on the ground. Hence, the Jade Emperor thought it was disrespectful and offended the heavens. For such a trivial matter, there was no rain in Fengxian County for 3 years. Only God knew how many people had died in the 3 years of drought. If the young were strong, they could leave their homes and find another way to survive. However, the old, weak, women, and children did not have the ability to move. Furthermore, during the journey to the west, even the Dongxing divine continent, which had the best environment, was run amok by demons. When mortals left their homes, they would most likely be eaten by demons. Was the Jade Emperor really such a petty person? Obviously not. This was just a tacit understanding between immortals. No matter how much they needed the incense power provided by the mortals, they still had to be polite. If anyone offended them, they would punish them with thunderous means. Their purpose was only to warn the mortals that they had to worship them and believe in them obediently. On the other hand, those demons and devils who opened their sects and ate humans to commit evil acts were unscrupulous. The few demon kings who were captured and sent to the heaven's monster-slaying platform were basically existences that had offended the dignity of the heaven. And this was only the method used against external forces. The inner conflict between immortals was even more serious. For example, during the God Investiture Tribulation, the disciples of the Chan sect, the Ren sect, and the Jia sect went down the mountain to fight. Apart from the factor of being on the tribulation list, who could say for sure that there was no factor of Taoism behind it? After the inner scroll of the Celestial Sect of Wonders ended, it was the inner scroll of the Celestial Sect of Wonders and the Western Sect of Wonders. It was as if the conflict between incense and orthodoxy would never end. The former destroyed the Shang sect, which was strong enough to fight against the cultivation world, while the latter almost completely destroyed the last breath of the demon race. Every time a similar dispute occurred, there would always be countless casualties and irreparable injuries. It was not a good thing to have more immortals because theoretically speaking, being on the immortal list could make one immortal. But in fact, before the realm of primordial unity golden immortal, one had to go through tribulations such as the 3 calamities and 9 disasters, the 5 decays of heaven and man, and other tribulations. The slightest mistake would lead to death and the destruction of both body and spirit. Immortals had reached the peak of cultivation, and no one, including Hong Jun, could continue to cultivate. If one wanted to go further and achieve immortality, one had to rely on the power of incense. Even existences at the level of Buddha and Haotian had to fight for incense from time to time. How could the other immortals stay out of it? In a few breaths of time, the fighting in the field had ended. Unexpectedly, but reasonably, those who survived the internal strife were all members of the God worship sect who were bent on killing Lin Yuan. It made sense. Even if they were not escapees from the untainted world, they were still the descendants of the escapees. They were not unfamiliar with the classification of the various worlds. Not to mention the current Tianwu world, even if the Tianwu world was promoted to a medium-class world, it would be nothing more than an insignificant speck of dust in the endless sea of bitterness. Becoming an immortal of the Tianwu continent was indeed tempting to them, but the temptation was not great. Moreover, they were all existences who cultivated the untainted world method, which was much stronger than the method cultivated in the spirit space. Even if the side that changed sides was also the Monster King, the fighting strength of the two was completely different. An octopus-like Monster King turned his face and coldly looked at Lin Yuan and the several spirits standing behind him. After a moment of consideration, he swung his tentacles and said coldly, "Black Jiao, I hope the next time we meet, you still have so many tricks up your sleeve. Let's go." Although they were the victors, there were only 12 Monster Kings left. The number of Monster Kings that had retained their peak combat strength could be counted on one hand. With this kind of combat strength, it was definitely enough to sweep through an ordinary small to medium-sized sea region. However, facing the current city of trade, not to mention the unfathomable black flood dragon that had yet to make a move, even those spirit masters might not be able to deal with it. You come as you wish and leave as you wish. Do you think this is a charity hall? Lin Yuan saw the octopus Monster King turn around and leave without any fear, and his eyes could not help but become gloomy. This kind of behavior again. These Monster Kings of the God worship sect were indeed qualified to be arrogant. After all, the totem group was once an existence that was comparable to the Xian sect. However, in Lin Yuan's eyes, they were not qualified to be arrogant now. After Hongjuan's destructive blow, the totem group could only be regarded as a symbol of an existence. Not to mention absorbing the power of incense, not many people even recognized them. With this, they still regarded themselves as a high and mighty existence, looking down on all living beings. Hearing Lin Yuan's words, the octopus Monster King paused. Its eyes were gloomy like water. It said in a cold voice, "Black Jiao, what you have here has nothing to do with us. We are just following orders to flatten the city of trade. Now that things are out of control, we will admit defeat and leave. What else do you want us to do? Kneel down and pour tea for you?" There is no need to pour tea and apologize. Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and said in an equally cold tone, "I just want to say, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave today." Humph. The octopus Monster King snorted coldly. The remaining Monster Kings all stood behind it. In terms of momentum, they did not lose to Lin Yuan, who had the upper hand. It seemed that they still had something to rely on. Of course, they did not come in front of Lin Yuan. Naturally, they would not take out all their trump cards. If they did not have something to rely on, it would be the biggest joke. However, Lin Yuan did not think that these Monster Kings of the God worship sect could withstand his anger. Chapter 1231. Black Jiao, you'd better think this through. Seeing that Lin Yuan did not say anything and had no intention of letting them go, the Octopus Demon King said with a gloomy face, "Although you've learned a variety of things, including the path of gods, immortals, demons, and the netherworld, we can see that you mainly cultivate the ancient path of totems. If not, why would you let a human manage the vast northern frontier? At this point, it paused and added, so, you should know very well how terrifying the power of a cultivator of the path of totems can be once he explodes. Do you really want to fight to the death with us? The three bravest crab brothers did not say anything. Being conferred the position of gods was already a great opportunity that they did not even dare to think about in the past. Now that they were completely convinced by Lin Yuan, they naturally had to know their priorities and would not speak carelessly. Cyrus also glanced at the octopus demon king with a meaningful look in its eyes. Jiao Wen stood behind Lin Yuan obediently. Lin Yuan grinned and turned to look at Jiao Wen. He said calmly, "You heard it too. They're very terrifying when they explode. Willow Rock region is your territory, so I respect your opinion. Let them stay or let them leave. It's your choice." This, Jiao Wen was slightly stunned. Clearly, he did not expect Lin Yuan to hand this question to him. After a moment of silence, Jiao Wen knew that if it were him in the past, he would definitely say something like, "I'll follow the orders of the Dragon King." However, the current Jiao Wen had matured a lot after leaving Lin Yuan for a period of time. In addition to Tai Zun and Cyrus' impressions, although he was not strong enough to take charge, he was gradually taking on the responsibility of a king. Therefore, Jiao Wen did not immediately answer Lin Yuan's question. Instead, he glanced at the gray-scaled flood dragon people who were fighting. Then, he clenched his teeth and looked at the octopus demon king. He said coldly, "The Dragon King is right. The City of Trade has never been a charity. No person or force can cause trouble in the City of Trade. It's impossible to come and go as you please. Today, you suddenly attacked the City of Trade and realized that you couldn't do anything and left. If you come back tomorrow or the day after, what will I do? Do I have to let you go every time out of fear? You're just a dog under Black Jiao. What right do you have to talk to this king?" The octopus king's expression changed several times. He turned to Lin Yuan and said, "Dragon King, what do you think? Or are you sure you want to make a deadly enemy of our god worship sect? It was your church of gods that provoked this king first. This king's personality has always been like this." Lin Yuan slowly straightened his body. His eyes were cold as he laughed, "Since you've offended me, you'll have to wait for my crazy revenge. This king has been famous for a long time. So, this king is allowed to have a deadly feud with the Church of Gods, but this king is not allowed to retaliate against you? Since the sea god you're loyal to has spoken, then, what are you waiting for?" The moment his voice fell, the three brothers of the brave crab clan had already roared out and went straight to the 12 monster kings. When they heard Jiao Yi's words, they already knew the final direction of this matter. At the same time, they were very clear in their hearts that this matter was not a conflict between two forces at all. This was a full-blown war from start to finish. In war, there were grand and magnificent frontal battles, as well as bizarre and unpredictable schemes. However, there was no such thing as giving in or compromising, because only the losers would give in and compromise. Before the end of the war, such actions could be called schemes. No one wanted to have a poisonous snake behind them, thinking about them day and night. So when there was a chance to cut the grass, they had to remove the roots. Not to mention these monsters from the Church of Gods that had attacked the City of Trade, they didn't even intend to let go of the Church of Gods that had plotted everything. "How dare you!" The octopus monster king was even more shocked and angry. As he roared, the monster power in his body surged out like a majestic river. He didn't retreat or avoid, but directly met the three brothers of the brave crab clan. Although he also knew that the Black Jiao and the Church of Gods were gradually showing signs of incompatibility, even if the Black Jiao was afraid of the strength and foundation of the Church of Gods in the future and didn't retaliate against the Church of Gods, how could the Black Jiao's foundation be weak? In the future, as long as the Black Jiao was alive and the City of Trade existed, the Church of Gods would be firmly suppressed in the outer sea and would never be able to enter the truly rich deep sea area. Not to mention, with the constant fighting between the various dynasties in the Tianwu world, the Tianwu continent was being unified, and the northern frontier was the force that was most likely to unify the Tianwu continent. At that time, the Church of Gods would have an even harder time. The relationship between the two sides was like this. In any case, Lin Yuan couldn't just stand by and watch them plot against him behind his back. Although the Octopus Monster King was also aware of this point, it really couldn't do anything today. After all, for them, although the desire to erase Lin Yuan was not as strong as the Heavenly Court, since they were already on the opposite side, they couldn't provide convenience for Lin Yuan. Today, if they were defeated in the hands of Lin Yuan's new god, who knew how many ambitious people who wanted to become gods would want to directly destroy the Church of Gods as a congratulatory gift to ask for a god position? Although the Church of Gods was not afraid of these natives of the Tianwu world, lice could still bite people to death. As long as the Tianwu world was not promoted to a medium-class world, the Almighty of the Church of Gods would not be able to recover their previous cultivation. These natives of the Tianwu world had the possibility of grinding them to death. Therefore, they could be defeated, or they could be killed. But it definitely couldn't be today, let alone here. All of you, retreat quickly. I'll cover you. The Octopus Monster King's face was gloomy. The silent totem power in his body slowly circulated. He looked at Lin Yuan with a dignified face and said in a deep voice, "Although I don't know where you get the courage, you must pay the price for being an enemy of the Church of Gods." Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't answer, but his eyes were fixed on the Octopus Monster King. The counterattack of a totem was no laughing matter. Even if it was an insignificant totem, it could accumulate a large amount of incense power under the circumstances of an opportunity. The sudden eruption of power could be said to be destructive. Oh no, it wants to self-destruct. Cyrus's face changed several times. He stretched out his tentacles and aimed at the Octopus Monster King. A large amount of ink shot out in an attempt to kill the Octopus Monster King before it could complete the accumulation of energy. However, it was intercepted by an invisible energy. Suddenly, a hint of panic appeared in Cyrus's eyes. It was impossible for the self-destruction of a demon king to accumulate energy for such a long period of time. It was even more impossible for the energy to condense into a physical form just by gathering energy. Chapter 1232. At this moment, the Octopus King was about to self-destruct. Suddenly, Lin Yuan's high school shot out a 7-colored light. This 7-colored light directly enveloped the Octopus King. At this moment, everything returned to calm. The Octopus King seemed to have fallen into a pool of mud. All the power in his body couldn't explode at all. "This is," Lin Yuan snorted coldly. "A mere demon king dares to show off in front of me." Then, in the midst of this 7-colored light, a black light spread out directly. Like an iron chain, it locked the Octopus King. Then, there were bursts of black flames. It directly swallowed him. At this moment, the other 12 demon kings were all stunned. They had traveled extensively and had seen some things. But today, they were not prepared at all. They didn't even have the power to make people self-destruct. "Even if you kill us today, the God worship sect will be irreconcilable with you." The other demon kings were still shouting loudly. They felt that this was the only way to save their lives. However, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. "As for the rest, kill them all." At this moment, with this action and this sentence, the people in the city of trade seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Then, he rushed forward. Collision. The most intense collision. These two sides began to fight as if they didn't care about their lives. But anyone could see that these demon kings were no match for them at all. Lin Yuan glanced at these people sinisterly. "Leave one alive. Let them know that my city of trade is not a place where they can come and go as they wish. And I'm not afraid of this so-called God worship sect at all." After saying this, he directly turned and left. In addition to these things in front of him, he had another thing to do. He had already seen that after the Octopus King died, there was a shining seal. At this moment, he directly floated over and took the seal in his hand. He knew that no matter what he wanted to do at this moment, no one would resist. And now, when everyone saw Lin Yuan's actions at this moment, they could only believe in him. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan just smiled slightly and took the seal in his hand. Then, a force probed in. Suddenly, he seemed to have entered a special space. Monster graveyard. On a huge rock, there were 4 murderous words written on it. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan was stunned. Because he felt that at this moment, all the power in his body and even all the treasures had no response. It was as if he couldn't control his body at all. At this moment, in front of him was something like an altar. Eggs were placed on top of the altar. However, the color of each egg was different. Lin Yuan felt that his body seemed to begin to respond to these eggs. This feeling was very strange. It was as if he had been thrown into a world that had nothing but was filled with all kinds of energy. And these eggs were his only connections to these worlds. His hand finally touched the first red egg. The moment he touched it, there was a flash of light. At this moment, he felt a scorching force rising in his hand. Then, he used a ball of fire to explode it in his hand. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. It felt a bit like he was touching a burning furnace. The system didn't give any notification. At this moment, it was as if the system had malfunctioned. Tianwu World. There was actually such a strange place. Lin Yuan released his hand. He couldn't use any methods now, but he could feel how terrifying the power contained in this answer was. It even made his heart palpitate a little. What are these things? He immediately placed his hand on the second egg. But this time, it was an extremely cold force. 5 elements. Such an idea immediately arose in Lin Yuan's mind. Because he could clearly feel that at this moment, everything changed. Then, he directly walked towards the 3 eggs. He separately sensed the attributes of these eggs. Then, he went to check other places. The entire space was empty, only a merciless white. He had already sensed the 5 attribute eggs. However, he didn't know what to do. And this special seal, what was its use? Lin Yuan lightly shook his head. I didn't expect the Demon King to have such a thing on him. I underestimated them. But at this moment, a door suddenly rose from the side of the altar. There were countless talismans on this door, and many bells. At this moment, all the bells swayed, and the talismans danced. At this moment, Lin Yuan felt the surrounding aura change. Even the 5 attribute eggs began to faintly show some cracks. Then, rays of light were projected onto the eggs. Then, the door exploded in front of him. A clear howling sound came from the other side of the door. Demon Beast Graveyard. Lin Yuan instinctively felt that this place should be the main location of the so-called Demon Beast Graveyard. But immediately, a gust of strong wind directly gushed out from inside. Lin Yuan gently shook his head, then dodged to the side. If it was in the past, he wouldn't be afraid of this so-called strong wind at all. With his strength, it was nothing. But in this special space, he couldn't use any means at all. So at this moment, he could only dodge. In the end, before he could react, a huge suction force directly sucked him into the door. He was stunned. But after entering the array and seeing everything in the array, he suddenly had a guess in his heart. In front of him, there was a blood-red river. Or more accurately, a blood sea. This is probably not the Blood River Array. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, the Blood River Array began to surge. Good, good, good. I didn't expect to encounter the Blood River Array, which is as famous as the Nine Bends Yellow River Array. Today, I don't need to use any cultivation to break this Blood River Array. Lin Yuan stood upright. Looking at the churning blood in front of him, he took a step forward and stepped forward. At this moment, he felt a special power surging within him. It was as if there was something hidden in the blood river. Chapter 1233. Before Lin Yuan could take a step forward, a special figure appeared in front of him. It was a man dressed in armor. He stood in the middle of the blood river. He had a knife in his hand, and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. Ha! With a loud shout, the man's knife slashed towards him. At this moment, Lin Yuan had no way to dodge the attack. However, the eggs he touched before actually worked. The 5 attribute eggs from before had imprinted 5 special imprints on his hands. At the same time as the knife slashed towards him, Lin Yuan directly blocked it with his hand. The scorching imprint from the beginning of the creation seal worked. A raging fire emerged from his hand. The bright light illuminated the entire blood river, making it look awe-inspiring. Lin Yuan directly took the opponent's knife with one hand. But at the same time, the man in armor seemed to be stepping on flat ground as the blood water dragged him up. Then, he let it fall. Then, the man's knife, with a touch of blood, slashed towards Lin Yuan's head again. Lin Yuan sneered, "You're just a demon, not even a demon king. You want to fight me with your strength?" He charged straight ahead. At this moment, the bottom of his feet began to touch the ice shards. The second imprint worked, freezing. The entire blood river began to freeze. At this moment, the man could no longer connect with everything here. Lin Yuan just shook his head lightly. This great blood river array really disappointed him with only this level of strength. However, before he could rejoice, the ice under his feet began to crack. One by one, people in armor rushed out of the blood sea. Lin Yuan's eyes wandered. He had already seen that these guys were all condensed from the blood sea that seemed to be surging with waves. If he wanted to kill them, he had to break the blood sea under his feet first. Lin Yuan took a step forward. This time, he did not hesitate. He used the fire imprint on his left hand and the ice imprint on his right. The 2 imprints worked at the same time. On the blood sea, there was fire on one side and ice on the other. Those guys who had just come out of the water were all dealt with at this moment. Lin Yuan smiled. The blood river grand array was only so-so. However, his actions had also caused him to take a few steps forward. Because of that, he had also entered the grand blood river formation. The corners of Lin Yuan's eyes lifted slightly. Of course, he noticed this change, but he didn't care. In his opinion, this so-called change was completely insignificant. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been frightened long ago. However, he would never be frightened by this scene before him. At this moment, the surface of the water started to churn. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. The guy who had been hiding under the blood sea was finally going to reveal himself. He retreated slightly. The ice cracked and blood splattered everywhere. The flames were immediately extinguished. Lin Yuan wasn't afraid at all. At this moment, he clearly saw that the octopus demon king hadn't died. "Human, you shouldn't have made an enemy of the god-worship sect." The octopus kept bobbing up and down in the blood sea. Lin Yuan sneered. "I thought it was something amazing. It turned out to be a good-for-nothing guy like you." He directly mocked the octopus demon king. At this moment, the octopus demon king laughed. "In this blood sea, you actually dare to shout at me. Let's see how arrogant you can be." After he finished speaking, he leaped into the air. At the same time, suddenly, several chains appeared under his feet. Each of its tentacles was holding a chain. As it moved, the thing locked under the chain finally revealed its true appearance. They were ferocious dragons. Or rather, giant pythons were more appropriate. They didn't have horns on their heads, but their bodies had exceeded the limit of pythons. They were almost towering. In this situation, the giant pythons began to bare their fangs and brandish their claws. They seemed to know that if the octopus demon king released the chains, they would rush up. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. "I was wondering how you could not die in this situation. You can even be reborn from a drop of blood. It seems that it's because of these things." The octopus demon king laughed. "Of course. Otherwise, why would I, a demon king, use such a method to fight you?" After he finished speaking, he had already released the chains in his hands. At this moment, the giant pythons had already broken through the restrictions of the Blood Sea and opened their bloody mouths toward Lin Yuan. Rays of light spurted out from these guys' mouths. It was as if at this moment, Lin Yuan had become their food. Lin Yuan awakened the third mark. A layer of golden light immediately shone on his body. This was the metal attribute. It covered his entire body with a thick layer of crops. No matter how big and powerful these giant pythons were, they couldn't break through his defense. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and glanced at the octopus demon king in front of him. Forget it. Since you didn't deal with me before, why don't you do it now? Immediately after, a green light suddenly rose from his side. Giant trees appeared majestically from his side. The huge vines turned into long dragons one after another. In an instant, they intertwined with these guys. In the battle between the two, Lin Yuan actually had the upper hand. The octopus demon king's face was full of disbelief. What's going on? How can you be so strong in this blood core battle? And you can even use these special powers. Lin Yuan smiled gently. You must have forgotten that this is Tianwu. And you should also know that there are times when people defy the heavens. There's always a way out. Lin Yuan took a step forward and rushed forward. This time, all the imprints on his hands evaporated. They directly took effect on the octopus demon king's body. At this moment, the octopus demon king's body exploded. The giant pythons also directly returned to the bottom of the sea. Without the octopus demon king's control, they would no longer pay the price of the Blood Sea. Lin Yuan felt that his strength was recovering bit by bit. However, he knew that there were more giant pythons hidden in this Blood River Great Array. What he wanted was what was under the water. Under this Blood Sea, there was still something that hadn't revealed itself. Lin Yuan fiercely slapped the Blood River, causing the water to surge. He also activated the power of his own mark. The blood water continued to evaporate. And under this sea of blood, there was actually a sparkling stone. The stone was transparent, but there was a beauty inside with her eyes closed. She seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Chapter 1234. Lin Yuan carefully sized up the woman in the stone. To be exact, she wasn't a person. Although her upper body was that of a human, her lower body was that of a snake's tail. Lin Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes. This was the symbol of the Nuwa clan. A human body with a snake's tail. Lin Yuan knew that the person sealed inside was definitely several times stronger than an ordinary monster king. He could even sense the energy fluctuations inside. Lin Yuan lightly patted the stone. However, the woman inside didn't seem to be able to sense anything. Lin Yuan directly pressed his hand on the stone, and then slowly awakened the imprint on his hand. In that instant, the woman inside the stone seemed to sense something. She opened her eyes abruptly. However, those blood-red eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. Human, are you the one who suppressed me here? The woman's first words directly broke through his thoughts. Lin Yuan didn't expect that just waking up this woman would cause her to hate him so much. Let me remind you that I was only forced to enter here. Although I don't really want to explain it to you, I'm not used to admitting things that I didn't do. Lin Yuan said softly. His eyes were already filled with murderous intent. To him, he had the ability to ascend to godhood at any time, so he didn't care about these so-called gods. Not to mention the woman in front of him, who was of the same race as the Nuwa clan, even Pan Gu wouldn't be able to do anything. Let me out, and I'll agree to whatever conditions you have, the woman said again. However, this time, her voice didn't come from her mouth. Instead, it was directly transmitted into Lin Yuan's mind. He slightly narrowed his eyes. She could agree to any conditions? So arrogant? Who are you? Lin Yuan directly asked. However, the woman seemed to have lost her patience. Lin Yuan looked at the woman indifferently. If you don't say anything, I'll pretend that I never came here. Finally, the woman's expression changed. The anger in her eyes had already disappeared. I'm a member of the Nuwa clan. However, back then, I faked Lady Nuwa's decree and waved the myriad demon banner, which attracted 100,000 monsters and the monster kings from all directions. That's why Maiden Nuwa released him into this unknown world. Lin Yuan nodded, looking rather honest. So you are related to that woman. However, right after he said those words, the Nuwa clan member's expression changed. You must not disrespect Her Highness. However, her words were still too late. Not only did Lin Yuan say this, but he also directly pressed his hand on the stone. At this moment, countless cracks had already appeared on the stone. It was as if it was going to explode at any moment. At this moment, a sudden burst of light engulfed the woman and Lin Yuan. When Lin Yuan opened his eyes again, he found himself standing in a barren wilderness. He was surrounded by endless yellow sand. Although there was a city not far away, it was already in ruins. Lin Yuan looked at it gently, a trace of light flashing through his eyes. In such a barren and dilapidated place, there should be people living in the headquarters. However, everything seemed so different. The most obvious thing was that it was human. Before Lin Yuan could say anything, the woman had already begun to struggle on the ground. There was some pain in her expression. You're not afraid of death. Do you know that you almost killed the two of us just now? However, as she spoke, her divinity had already begun to shrink. Lin Yuan frowned as he looked at the woman on the ground. She didn't look like a human at all. She was clearly a slender little white snake. Lin Yuan directly coiled the white snake around his wrist. At this moment, the white snake was staring at him, its bright red tongue constantly sticking out of its mouth. Lin Yuan smiled. I didn't ask for your name before. Since you've become a white snake, I'll call you Little White. He had always taken things as they came. In any case, there were no signs at this time and place. Since he came to this unfamiliar place, he might as well take a stroll around. However, what he didn't expect was that as soon as he stepped into the earthen city, he found a group of people in tattered clothes kneeling on the ground. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. What kind of sacrificial ceremony was this? However, there was a god in this place. Lin Yuan had just stepped in when a person suddenly appeared in front of him. It was a long-haired man wearing armor and holding a long spear in his hand. Who are you? You don't know that the statue of the Night Patrol God is here. Why aren't you kneeling? Night Patrol God? Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He didn't expect that there would be a god in such a remote and barren place. However, he was an existence that could become a god. They would kneel to an unknown god here. He could even kill a demon king, not to mention a small god here. When the man saw that Lin Yuan was still indifferent, he snorted coldly. This is not a place for you to behave atrociously. If you don't kneel, I'll take your life. Lin Yuan just smiled. Then please. Lin Yuan's words stunned everyone around him. Some people even looked at him in disbelief. What's wrong with this young man? If he angers the Night Patrol God, I'm afraid he'll suffer again. That's right, young man. If you're not willing to kneel and worship the Night Patrol God, then leave this place. Don't stay here with us. In the end, you'll only harm us. Doubts filled Lin Yuan's ears. Bah. Bullsh *T Night Patrol God. He ruined my family. Suddenly, a voice came from the side. It was a child who was only 7 or 8 years old. His hair was messy and his clothes were ragged. However, he still stubbornly threw stones at them. Lin Yuan looked at the boy and his heart skipped a beat. None of these people could compare to a child. At least he knew that he had to resist this so-called Night Patrol God. Finally, the long-haired man stabbed at the little boy with a long spear. Little bastard, if you don't respect a god, you'll only end up dead. With a quiet sound, the long spear stabbed out. However, it didn't pierce the little boy's body. Lin Yuan had already blocked in front of the little boy. At this moment, Lin Yuan smiled and said directly, "I'm afraid it's not appropriate to attack a child. After all, he's still a child." His tone was calm as if he was comforting him. However, at this moment, the long-haired man stabbed at Lin Yuan with his spear. However, the long spear didn't pierce his body. Instead, it broke when it came into contact with his body. Chapter 1235. However, the spear did not pierce his body. Instead, it broke when it came into contact with his body. The long-haired man was shocked. "Who are you?" However, Lin Yuan did not respond to him. He took the child's hand and walked toward the statue. "Kid, how about I take you to smash that statue?" He ignored the horrified eyes of the crowd, took the child's hand, and walked to the side of the statue. At first, the little boy was a little scared when he saw the little white snake in his hand. But at this moment, all the fear disappeared. Instead, he took the initiative to grab Lin Yuan's hand and walk to the side. He even picked up a stone on the ground. Lin Yuan smiled slightly. But the long-haired man raised his arm and shouted, "Guards of the God worship sect in the border, there is someone plotting a rebellion. Come out." At this moment, neat shouts resounded through the whole place. A pair of soldiers in bright armor had already rushed out with spears in their hands. They were originally in another direction, but when they heard the man's shout, they all rushed over. Lin Yuan did not move. He glanced at the statue of the god of night and snorted coldly. "Are you also from the god worship sect?" It seems that this so-called god worship sect is real. They accept all kinds of shrimp soldiers and crab generals. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, the soldiers next to him shouted, "How dare you, unfilial son!" Then, they rushed directly toward him. The little boy was a little scared and wanted to dodge. Lin Yuan just smiled faintly. "Smash it." The little boy glanced at Lin Yuan. He did not know where the courage came from, but he directly threw the stone in his hand at him. Dong! "How dare you provoke the gods? Do you know what kind of crime this is?" Lin Yuan did not even look at these soldiers. Instead, he gently put his hand on the statue. Then, the statue began to shatter. It turned into stones on the ground. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan lowered his head and glanced at the little boy. "Look, you've avenged your parents with your own hands." After Lin Yuan finished his words, Kai Meng turned around and looked at the soldiers who were rushing towards him. Then, he coldly spat out a word, "Scram." This sentence instantly caused everyone present to retreat involuntarily. They were only mortals. He was no match for Lin Yuan at all. However, even though they were terrified and kept retreating, they didn't seem to want to give up just like that. "Good boy, you've inspired the people of the Church of God to destroy the statue of the God of Night in front of everyone. Today, you will die without a doubt." Lin Yuan didn't say anything. He just took a step forward, and the others immediately scattered in all directions. Not only the soldiers, but even the people around them immediately turned around. Some of them even began to quietly retreat. The little boy raised his little face and asked Lin Yuan, "Big brother, why are they so afraid?" Lin Yuan chuckled softly. "Because they feel that they should be the ones enslaved, so they don't dare to resist." As soon as Lin Yuan said this, the little boy gently patted Lin Yuan's body. "Big brother, I don't feel that I should be the one enslaved." Lin Yuan smiled slightly. He looked at the child's slightly stubborn and strong face. She gently stroked his head. "Of course not. There are more courageous than them." However, what he didn't expect was that the little boy directly knelt down at this moment. "Big brother, please accept me and follow you." His face was extremely serious. At this moment, he seemed to have pinned all his hopes on Lin Yuan. At this time, the little snake began to spit out as if it was a warning. The little boy stepped back in fear. Lin Yuan gently shook his head. If the so-called god of night in front of him wasn't a member of the god worship sect, he definitely wouldn't have destroyed all of this. However, he clearly knew that he and the god-worship sect had long been irreconcilable. So there was no need to leave the front. Moreover, it was the other party who spoke rudely first. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used such a method to deal with them. Sighing softly, Lin Yuan directly took a step forward. Little brother, it's not that easy to pursue me. You have to make others suffer more. He didn't directly cut off the little boy's hope. He also knew that the little boy had no relatives now. So he didn't want to cut off the little boy's flame of hope. He must leave this place. He couldn't stay in Border City forever. Lin Yuan prepared to leave directly. However, he didn't expect the little boy to run directly in front of him and then grab the little snake wrapped around his wrist. Big brother, I'm not afraid. Take me with you. Look, I'm not afraid of the snake on your hand. Lin Yuan sighed in his heart. However, he immediately had a new idea. Why not just arrange for the little boy to stay here and let him directly become a god? As soon as this idea appeared in his mind, the little snake twisted its body. Little White, it seems that you agree with my idea. He was just finding an excuse for himself. And Little White didn't know anything at all. He didn't know what he was thinking. Little guy, if you really want to follow me, you have to be prepared. For example, you have to stand in the desert for a while now, until it's dark. Lin Yuan's condition could be said to be harsh. The temperature difference between day and night in the desert was already large. Now that the sun was already setting in the west, the temperature in this place would plummet in a while. Not to mention that the little boy was wearing thin clothes. Even if he wore thick clothes, he might not be able to resist the night chill. Moreover, desert wolves often appeared in this place. Although it was a remote and desolate place, the probability of demon beasts appearing in this place was also very high. Lin Yuan felt that he was simply courting death by doing so. However, the little boy nodded firmly. He ran directly into the desert outside. Lin Yuan always turned around and walked into the restaurant in the Earth City. He ordered some food and also some wine. Then he sat on the city wall and kept looking at the little boy. The little boy's stubbornness was very similar to his. That was why he had such a special idea. He wanted to directly take the little boy to his side. However, what he didn't expect was that the little guy's stubbornness was actually comparable to his. He even dared to directly run out in this situation. Lin Yuan sighed softly. He originally wanted to let the little boy know the difficulties and retreat, but now it seemed that it wouldn't work. Chapter 1236. Lin Yuan did not expect the little boy to be so obsessed with him. At this moment, he even seemed to have other thoughts. Because he had already seen the little boy stand up. And at this moment, he looked directly at the specks of light in the desert. Lin Yuan frowned. He ate and drank while looking at the little boy. The little boy did not even have a weapon in his hand, and he actually went directly towards the specks of light. That should be the desert wolves. A wave of wolf howls spread in all directions. Under such circumstances, Lin Yuan could not help but want to go down and help. But immediately, he shook his head and stopped this thought in his heart. Because he could see that at this moment, the little boy's body was actually emitting a special kind of light. Although it was still very weak, it was enough to make the little boy fearless of these desert wolves. Lin Yuan shook his head lightly. But suddenly, he realized that in the depths of the desert, there seemed to be something rushing over here. This discovery surprised him a little. It was an extremely powerful force. Even the demonic aura emitted from its body had reached the level of a demon king. In such a remote and barren place, there was actually a demon king? Lin Yuan looked in that direction with some surprise. As for the little snake on his wrist, it was Little White. With its head held high, it hissed and spat out its string in that direction. Seeing that the little boy was already entangled with the desert wolves, Lin Yuan did not even look at him. Those desert wolves had already begun to roll over. Bite. But the light on the little boy's body directly protected him. Not only did he not suffer any harm, but he also seemed to have received some kind of blessing. Waves of powerful force directly bloomed from his body. At this moment, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not expect to meet such a talented person in this place. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan had already jumped down from the city wall. Although he was still holding the wine bottle in his hand, it did not affect the aura emitted from his body. At this moment, the pack of wolves immediately retreated. Seeing this scene, the little boy stood up with a grunt. I can deal with them myself. I don't need your help. The little boy's tone was still stubborn. However, Lin Yuan did point at the depths of the desert. In the darkness, there seemed to be a monster with its mouth wide open. If it's just a wild beast, I naturally won't help, but, before he could finish his words, a gust of wind blew over. Then, it engulfed every inch of this place. The yellow sand that filled the sky covered everyone's eyes. In fact, the sand was like a sharp knife, cutting open wounds on the little boy's body one after another. Seeing this, Lin Yuan took a step forward. A strong wind blew. It directly blocked the yellow sand that filled the sky. Then, a flag of the god worship sect emerged from the depths of the desert, shining with a strange light. One after another, they appeared in the desert like bamboo shoots after the rain. The little boy was stunned. Big brother, these guys should be here to make trouble for us. After all, we destroyed the statue of the god of night before. After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan immediately sneered. He had long stopped caring about the statue of the god of night. It could be said that it was just a statue. Even if the god of night really came, he would not be afraid. Although this was a place of hesitation, these people were extremely believers of God. Lin Yuan could feel that the so-called Monster King was not very powerful. However, everything seemed to be accumulating a special aura. This aura was a threat. Lin Yuan shook his head gently. Little brother, are you afraid? The little boy shook his head firmly. Not only was he not afraid, but he was also a little excited. I'm not afraid. I'm just a little curious. Although I don't know what kind of opponent is coming, I feel that as long as you're here, big brother, they won't dare to do anything at all. After saying this, Lin Yuan just shook his head lightly. What if I can lend you some power to deal with these guys? A big idea suddenly surged in Lin Yuan's heart. Although this method seemed very cruel, this was the time to test the little boy. As long as this little boy could hold on, Lin Yuan did not care about having such a personal disciple. After all, the opportunity had already arrived here. From this moment on, his thoughts had already changed. At this moment, all of his thoughts had already begun to be put into action. That was to accept this little boy as his personal disciple. He directly waved his hand gently, and then a ray of energy directly fell from his hand into the little boy's body. All kinds of special energy did not have any special abilities. It was just to let him be treated fairly with these monster kings. Lin Yuan's change of action stunned the little boy. Big brother, you're the real god, right? Why do I feel that my body is full of power at this moment? He could not believe everything in front of him. He even clenched his fist tightly. A ray of light rose from his fist. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan smiled faintly. This is just me temporarily lending it to you. If you can really defeat the Monster King, I can consider accepting you as my disciple. After saying this, the little boy's eyes burned with a raging fire. He already did not want to be like this anymore. I will definitely do it. I will definitely defeat that Monster King. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure had already rushed forward. Seeing that Lin Yuan did not move, the desert wolf took a step forward and then fiercely hit the little boy's chest. It rolled again, but this time, the little boy's hand was like a sharp claw, directly piercing through the desert wolf's chest and abdomen. Blood splattered. The little boy stood up and turned his gaze to another desert wolf. These desert wolves did not retreat. Instead, they directly rushed forward. Their movements were very fast, and they had already arrived in front of the little boy. The battle began at this moment. The little boy was bathed in blood, and Lin Yuan was indeed drinking at the side. Blood dyed the desert red, and it also attracted the attention of the people in the city. Everything seemed so natural. But it was also so unnatural. Because at this moment, the little boy was like a fortress guarding the city gates. Lin Yuan had also discovered the other party's goal. They wanted to rush into the city. Chapter 1237. Finally, the Demon King revealed himself. It was a desert wolf that looked rather large, but now he was completely in human form. He stood upright like a human. He even held a weapon in his hand. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan only glanced sideways. The desert wolf Demon King growled at Lin Yuan. The little boy seemed to have been provoked by something. His figure was already moving faster and faster. It was as if he had long been able to withstand these special attacks. Furthermore, at this moment, all of his movements began to speed up. And at this moment, he could clearly feel that all of the rampaging demonic aura was converging toward the little boy's body. Lin Yuan's discovery made him feel that the little boy was strange. Perhaps he could really take him in as a disciple and let him become a god here. Lin Yuan had just gotten up that year, and the desert wolf Demon King had already fiercely stretched out its claws toward the little boy. This was not to say that he was at a disadvantage, but if it really happened, the little boy would not be able to block it at all. However, this claw did not land on the ground. Although the surrounding air shook, stirring up sand and dust that filled the sky. Lin Yuan discovered that although the little boy was not injured, on the contrary, he actually used his own hands to block the desert wolf Demon King's sharp claws. He gritted his teeth stubbornly. It's just a Demon King. I won't submit. The little boy used all his strength and used both of his hands to block one of the Demon King's claws. Lin Yuan felt more and more that this kid had the potential to be the main character. Whether it was his resistance or the methods he used with this kind of power. It all meant that this kid was a one-in-a-million martial arts prodigy. Lin Yuan was even considering whether he should create some fantasy cultivation methods and give them to this kid. However, the Demon King did snort coldly. A little human dares to stop me? You're courting death. After he finished roaring, his body suddenly expanded a lot, and he seemed to carry a special power. At this moment, both Lin Yuan and the little boy were surprised. Because at this moment, the Demon King actually appeared in a three-headed and six-armed state. The two of them did not expect this at all. 6 strong arms kept squeezing the little boy's body. That Wolf King was still roaring, "Despicable person, you destroyed my idol. Today, I'm going to wash this place in blood. You lowly people should kneel in the ground and submit." Lin Yuan finally walked over slowly with a bottle of wine in his hand. He glanced at the Wolf King in front of him. Who said that humans should submit? After he finished speaking, the Wolf King turned around and let out a furious howl. It was as if his thoughts had been stirred under such circumstances. That's what I'm saying. In such a big city, not a single person came to stop this king. Instead, they let a little boy fight here. Do you still dare to say that humans aren't despicable? As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 heads spat out 3 balls of fire. He headed straight for Lin Yuan. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan just sneered. Little brother, I won't leave this suicidal thing to you today. The test will be carried out in the future. Today, I want to see how capable this guy is. After saying this, Lin Yuan directly threw the wine bottle in his hand. The wine bottle hit the desert wolf Demon King's body and instantly exploded. The wine bottle shattered. The high concentration wine inside swept through the Demon King's body at this moment. Not only that, his body also kept retreating. It was as if he could not withstand the pressure of the wine bottle at all. How is this possible? It's just a wine bottle. How can it be so powerful? His eyes were filled with disbelief. However, Lin Yuan did not give him a chance to regret. In fact, he had already sent out a palm strike. Kneel down. As soon as he finished speaking, the desert wolf demon king knelt on the ground, or more accurately, prostrated on the ground. Lin Yuan snorted coldly. I thought you had become a demon king, but I didn't expect you to only be a fake demon king. How dare you call yourself a god? The desert wolf demon king was completely stunned. Who are you? How can you see my level at a glance? After saying this, he looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. Lin Yuan did not say anything. Instead, he walked towards him step by step and took the little boy's hand. Kill him. Just being a god is not enough to avenge you. As long as you kill the god of night, you can be considered to have truly avenged yourself. Lin Yuan's words immediately made the desert wolf demon king's expression change. He had even transformed into his original form, a giant wolf that was 2 meters tall. A woo! A cry escaped from his mouth. At this moment, the so-called people of the Church of God, who had been waiting obediently at the back, all rushed over at this moment. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan just sneered. In his opinion, these guys were not enough to be called his opponents. The little boy directly stood in front of Lin Yuan. Big brother, let me deal with them. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already rushed out. At this moment, everyone could clearly see that the little boy had turned into a breeze and began to attract everyone's attention. Lin Yuan was also slightly surprised. He did not expect this little boy to be so talented. He had only lent him the energy for a while, and he could actually find the key to it. And use it. He watched as the little boy began to cut melons and vegetables to deal with those guys. Lin Yuan just smiled faintly and looked at the desert wolf demon king. Now do you know why we humans are so strong? You beast. Beast. He was not wrong. In the eyes of humans, wolves were just beasts. It was just that this guy was now wearing the mantle of a god. He claimed to be the god of night here. And then he earned incense. Lin Yuan wanted to kill this guy directly, but at this moment, the desert wolf demon king was actually trying to escape. He turned around directly, as if he did not want to have any more dealings with Lin Yuan, so he chose to escape. However, how could Lin Yuan let him escape like this? He opened his mouth and a 7-colored light directly wrapped around the desert wolf demon king's body. No matter who you are, aren't you afraid of the revenge of the Church of God? I am from the Church of God. If you annoy us, there is no way out. Chapter 1238. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. I've never thought of having a way out, because in my opinion, trash like you are not worth it at all. He just said faintly. There was not a trace of hesitation in his tone. In the end, he directly reached out and grabbed the desert wolf demon king's neck. But you can stay and be my little brother's sparring partner. After saying this, he directly threw the demon king to the little boy. From today onwards, he will be your personal punching bag. The desert wolf king seemed to be unable to bear being a human punching bag at all. He wanted to struggle desperately. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan directly punched him in the face, causing him to involuntarily let out a series of wails. I told you not to play tricks with me. Be your punching bag obediently, and I might let you go. However, just as he finished speaking, the desert wolf king turned his head to look in another direction. However, the guys who followed him, except for those who were dealt with by the little boy, had all run away. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Why didn't you all get rid of them? The little boy scratched his head. It's not that I can't, but that I can't catch up to them at all. After saying this, he was already squatting on the ground. The power that Lin Yuan had lent him had slowly been torn out of his body. Lin Yuan nodded slightly. However, at this moment, the people in the factory all ran out at this moment. They all looked at Lin Yuan and the little boy with horror. However, most of their gazes were filled with fear as they looked at the desert wolf demon king lying on the ground. Although I don't know who you are, please don't bring this disaster to us. You can bear the anger of these monsters, but we can't. Among these people, some had already begun to criticize Lin Yuan. He suddenly turned his head. Originally, he thought that by standing up for the people in the city, even if the people in the city were not grateful to him, they would not criticize him like now. No one would be willing to be ordered around and enslaved by others. But now, he understood that these people were simply used to being ordered around by these so-called gods. He snorted and said, "Well, since you're so willing to believe in gods, I'll arrange a god for you now." After saying that, he turned around and left. However, the people in the city thought that he was a madman. No one would believe what he had just said. Only the little boy believed that all his thoughts were on Lin Yuan. He trusted him unconditionally. After all, he had personally experienced how terrifying the man in front of him was. Lin Yuan shook his head. "I still don't know your name," he asked the little boy in front of him. The little boy hesitated for a long time but did not say his name. "I don't have a name. I only remember my parents calling me Bruiser before they died." When he said this, his body was constantly under pressure. He did not want to recall what had happened that day. Lin Yuan sighed softly and pointed at the little boy. "From now on, I'll make you the god of this wasteland. But you have to be virtuous." Of course, he knew that if he casually arranged a god in this place, he was afraid that this matter would not be resolved so easily. Moreover, he could also feel that the matter at the summit was not over yet. Because he had already sensed that after the Monster King was captured, something else was coming here. Or it could be said that this was the god-worship sect behind the King of Medicine. But what he did not expect was that the people who came were not from the god-worship sect, but a group of people who looked very special. Although their clothes were also tattered, there seemed to be some special changes in this matter. No matter what kind of weapon they held in their hands, their body was even more murderous. When the little boy saw them, he could not help but feel a little excited. These are the heroes of our city. They are the only ones who dare to fight against those gods and monsters. Oh. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He did not expect that at this moment, there would be such a reaction. And he did not expect that there would be such a group of unusual people in this place. At least compared to the people in the city, they could be considered the same kind. Seeing that these people were getting closer and closer, the little boy ran out excitedly. "Uncle Moo, this big brother is like them. They don't believe in the gods here, and they don't believe in those monsters. Just now, he personally destroyed the Monster King. It's that desert wolf." After the little boy finished his words, the so-called heroes sighed in despair. "We were wondering why there was a problem with the vast ancient road. It turns out that the god of night has been killed by you." "Huh?" Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He looked at the people in front of him and then asked, "What is the vast ancient road? What is the problem you are talking about?" The leader of the group stood out. He first pulled the little boy to his side and then lowered his voice. The voice said, "There are many monster kings hidden in the blue dragon bone knife. If we are not careful, we will die inside. We just want to find a way to kill these people, but we didn't expect that we would suffer such a heavy loss this time." After he finished speaking, he did not speak again. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. What kind of place could it be that there were so many monster kings hiding? His thoughts began to move. However, he quickly calmed his mind down again. Because he had already sensed the tremors in that direction. Lin Yuan raised his head slightly and narrowed his eyes. "Tai Dan, do you want to take a walk with me on this vast ancient road?" These words immediately caused these people to stop him. "No, you are going to die if you go like this. You won't have a chance to come back alive. The things inside are not something that a desert wolf monster king can compare to." Lin Yuan shook his head slightly and then looked at the crowd. Then he said slowly, "So what? It's just some demonic beasts. It's just nice to find a companion for little Iron Egg." After saying this, Lin Yuan pulled little Tai Dan and left. He directly headed in the direction of the vast ancient road. According to these people, as long as they followed this road, they would reach the so-called vast ancient road. Chapter 1239. Lin Yuan's movements were neither fast nor slow. In just a short while, he brought the little boy, who was Tai Dan, to the vast ancient path. However, at this moment, the place was already filled with demonic qi. There were even some special demonic beasts patrolling outside the vast ancient path. It was as if they were inspecting their own territory. Lin Yuan just shook his head gently. To him, these guys in front of him were not very powerful. There were too many demonic beasts here. The desert wolf demon king from before must have something special to be able to stand out among these demonic beasts. Just as he was thinking, a series of gongs and drums suddenly sounded. Then, demonic beasts were caught one after another. They were the synonym for violence and cruelty. Lin Yuan could even clearly see many human corpses hidden outside the vast ancient path. There were also many demonic beasts left here eating humans. Lin Yuan frowned. He didn't expect to see such a scene. Bruiser, who was beside him, just explained that these were the offerings sent by humans. They were for these demonic beasts. These were all sacrifices. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan's face turned cold. He did not expect there to be such existences in this place. Sure enough, the more backward a place was, the more these things would cause trouble. Usually, we can't find any humans. Now that someone has taken the initiative to come to us, it's a good snack for us. The demonic beasts next to him began to talk nonsense. Lin Yuan ignored them. Instead, he pulled the little boy deeper into the vast ancient path. It was as if he could not cut these things. At this moment, a demonic beast finally jumped out. How dare you, human? Is this a place where you can barge in? Their voices became very clear and crisp. There was even a hint of threat in their voices. However, they did not rashly attack directly because they knew that the man in front of them must be quite capable if he dared to create the vast ancient path with a child. They had even heard that there were some extremely powerful cultivators in the human world. However, what they did not know was that the human in front of them could destroy them at any time. Not even a trace of them would be left. Lin Yuan gently turned his head. Iron egg, this place looks really filthy. Why don't you clean it up? As soon as he finished speaking, the little boy immediately dashed towards the surroundings. He was as fast as lightning as he launched a series of attacks, eliminating all the demonic beasts in the surroundings. The blood had already flowed and covered the ground. The little boy didn't care about this. In fact, he didn't even feel guilty about killing these guys. Because in his opinion, they were the main culprits who had harmed the human race. Lin Yuan nodded lightly. He had previously taught the little boy a special technique, the killing formula. It could let this little boy feel the realm in the midst of slaughter. Even this made him a step closer to becoming a god. Cultivating this kind of cultivation method, in addition to his various experiences, would definitely make him a killing god. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not hesitate and immediately let him take action. But this time, it was as though a hornet's nest had been poked open. One after another, demonic beasts began to emerge from the ancient path. Although they did not launch any attacks, they were eyeing them covetously from the side. Their appearance was already extremely terrifying. It was as though they were going to attack these guys. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan sighed. I really didn't expect the things in this place to be so difficult to deal with. Moreover, there are so many of them. He suddenly turned his head to look at the little boy. Bruiser, do you want to get rid of these guys? Or rather, do you see anyone among these guys that you like? Since he was about to become a god, he needed to have more god positions under his command. Firstly, it was to strengthen his courage. Secondly, he needed to pay attention to some checks. Firstly, he had already agreed to let this little boy become his disciple. Seeing this scene, those who had hands felt offended. After all, it was unacceptable to be looked down upon by a human like this. Before they could do anything, someone immediately rushed over. It was the brave warriors who had been following them. They were not at ease with Lin Yuan and Bruiser coming to the ancient path alone. Don't anger these guys. If that happens, we won't be able to escape. These brave warriors directly blocked in front of the two. Although they saw the corpses in front of them, they did not expect it to be done by Bruiser. They did not even know why this happened. It's just that they put the target of suspicion on Lin Yuan. I think this young man must have some skills, but he is not necessarily very strong. Therefore, when they thought of this, they had already chased after them. They wanted to save the two of them. For them, it was very important to have an assistant who could fight against them. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan turned his head to look at them. If you let them become your guards, it should be considered good. After all, they are quite strong. Of course, this strength was relatively speaking. At least in this desolate place, their strength could be considered passable. Lin Yuan had seen all kinds of people, so at this moment, he did not hesitate at all. He directly said, "Are we willing to support Bruiser to become a god?" This sentence stunned everyone. They did not expect this young man in front of them to say such unfathomable words. In their opinion, this kid did not know how to write the word death. Otherwise, why would he have such an expression and action? However, at this moment, some special changes occurred in their mentality. So many humans actually sent themselves to our doorstep. It seems like we are in for a treat this time. The demonic beasts began to encircle these people, and at this moment, the faces of these brave warriors turned solemn. Oh no, if we are surrounded by these monsters, we won't have a chance to escape. Just as they finished speaking, suddenly, a huge monster walked over from not far away. It was the same type of monster. The huge ape's body was even surrounded by all kinds of lights. It seemed like it would not be easy to deal with. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. It was a monster king. He did not expect that there would be some people with some strength in this place. However, this was not enough to make him feel strange. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. This ancient path was indeed a little mysterious. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.